Thank you.
The political class, the contestants, everybody is trying to outsteal the other.
Remorse is not taught in any school. Manners is something you get from your mother. You don't get it from your political party.
Why are we so unfocused as a country? Why are we spending money and resources, yet we have real challenges in this country?
This coronavirus pandemic should teach us one thing, that universal healthcare is critical. Because at this point, whether you have a medical card that covers you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. SpiceFM. Nyeri.
Building up on Mombasa Road this morning, already inbound to the city. Looking at other parts of Nairobi, actually looks pretty good today. Still dark, but just a few minutes after 6 o'clock, Muthui, just at that corner on the Thika Superhighway is what is building up. Way past Survey and past that towards the Safari Park Hotel. Not too bad this morning. Looking at it coming out of Westlands, it's going to build up and get pretty sticky. And Langata Road also, we know what it's going to look like this morning. Let's try and keep things to a dull roar, shall we? Talk to us on SpiceFMKE on Twitter. Text on 40127. Just in case you see something going out of whack, let us know and we'll see how we can keep things moving this morning.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Very good morning to you, and how you doing? It's the 15th day of September 2021. Kenya's biggest conversation is up and running on this lovely Wednesday morning. Ndu,
yes?
How are you?
I am fine, thank you.
Yes. It's good to see you again.
Same here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Welcome the visitor.
It is with great pleasure I have been given this opportunity to say a few words of welcome to good friend and colleague, Mr. C.T. Muga. I welcome you, sir.
Wait a moment. That long speech was what again?
It was for you. I did my very best, C.T. That's some of my best stuff.
No, I don't doubt the best stuff. It's the welcome. So I'm the guest.
Niwewe.
Okay.
Mgeni wa heshima. Mgeni wetu wa heshima.
I arranged my mouth. I arranged everything.
No,
and then someone asks you what did you just do?
The only thing
me
now.
what did I just do?
Yeah.
No. I brought out the best China.
Am I to
everything.
assume that after the show, ile zawadi tunapatiaga wageni nitapewa?
Tijali. Shawekwa.
There'll be some lovely wood carving.
With my name on it.
The one that you put on your... What are those things called that people put in their sitting rooms?
Wall units.
Wall units.
What do you call you as a traffic cabinet?
I know the furniture you're referring to. Yes.
How are you though, City?
Very well.
Uh-huh. Those 2 days.
I recommend leave.
Leave who?
No. Not leave as in kuacha. Leave as in kupumzika.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Not leave as in...
He was not saying he recommends you leave.
No, I'm not recommend you leave.
Where?
I recommend leave. This idea of taking time off, it is a very good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You can feel it in your bones.
Man, you rest. You feel charged. The world looks different. I mean, it's the same world, yes. It looks different. Even people look happier, more pleasant. And the same people you left here.
Love is all around you.
Oh, that's how it's... So that's what they mean.
So the feeling goes.
Okay.
There's a song.
There's a song.
I feel it in my fingers. I feel it in my toes.
Toes, not bones.
It's toes. Why now?
She was about to do the whole... Okay, just go on, please. Next.
Sorry.
What are the next words? You see, I was on a roll. And then?
I asked to be forgiven. I am going to be keeping quiet on several occasions in the future. I shall not ask questions that nobody asked me to. I shall instead listen.
Oh, yeah.
The lyrics will come back, don't worry. At a time when you least expect it.
Hapo.
Then you say, I never did what? I never experienced it.
Very good morning. Welcome to Kenya's Biggest Conversation. Today, we will be having a conversation with the man who is... So what is this? Is he second in succession or third? In the event the president is not in office, incapacitated, the deputy president shall take over.
So he's
in the event the president and the deputy are not, the speaker shall take over. So in
he's
terms
second.
of succession, is he second or third?
He's second.
Okay.
Because the deputy president would be first.
All right. So Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin B. Muthui, will be joining us today at 7:30.
So the president is not the first.
No, he's already there.
He's not the first in
So that
succession.
means if
He
you're
can't
already
succeed
there,
himself.
No, if you're already there, it means you're first.
It means you are it.
So the counting is the succession.
Yeah, that's why you have the winner, then you have first runner
The
up.
first person who succeeds you is
The
first successor.
Voila.
And the one who succeeds the successor
Is the second.
fourth.
Hey, now we'll be pushing it, no?
No, that's it. It ends there.
It's finished.
No vacancy.
At some point, it ends there. Have an election.
Okay. Not deputy speaker.
Pan.
No, sorry.
What is Speaker
No,
of
go
the
to
Senate
election.
and the Chief Justice? Nothing. So he'll be here with us. He'll be in the studio, in the Situation Room. We'll give him the hot seat. We want to understand, first, he has been the man who was superintendent over the 11th and 12th Parliament. This is the Parliament that's implementing the Constitution of Kenya 2010, and also the Parliament that is discussing amending the Constitution, among other things. Parliament that has been accused of being usurped by the executive. Parliament that has tried to hold its ground in very many things. So we'll get to understand his view on managing such a parliament, a National Assembly, and also he wants to be president. So let him come and tell us why he won, why Justin Muthui and not anybody else.
Of course, as you ask why, then the question, why not Justin Muthui?
Yeah. Yeah, he can't throw that question back at us. We'll ask him, why do you want us to elect you? Why can't you elect me? You talker. Where end up us? So that we'll have a conversation with. And then we'll also seek to understand what's happening in Laikipia. Now, yesterday there was some fresh issue happening in Rumuruti town, Laikipia County, where locals were reportedly clashing with herders who had brought their animals close to their lands in Marura area. The Rift Valley Regional Commissioner, George Natembea, will be speaking to us at 7 o'clock just to get this and understand what's happening. And then at 9...
At 9 o'clock, we're going to be looking at what African coups say about us. Veteran writer and journalist Charles Obonyango is going to join us this morning, looking at the different coups that we've seen around the continent, what it says about leaders, but what more so it says about us as citizens of Africa. Be interesting to have that conversation today because it's been long running. Many things have happened as we sat and watched. What does it say then about us?
Yes.
Citizens.
Okay. We start with COVID.
Yes, we do. All right. So let's look at world numbers. We've not done this in a minute. 226,661,161 COVID cases on the globe. 4.662880 million have resulted in death. Unfortunately, we're still looking at the highest numbers coming out of the continental United States with 42 million now. There are 8 million shy of 50 million COVID cases still looking at trying to vaccinate a large number of their population. Again, vaccines still making their way through. Now, if you come back home, vaccines still making their way through in Nairobi. But one thing that we have seen is that as more and more vaccines have been given, I am not saying there's a connection between the two, but we're realizing lower numbers. Now, it cannot be that... I can't say that it cannot be, or it could be a mere coincidence, but we've seen now reporting of cases under 400 in the last 5 days in Kenya. So
what has reduced again?
The number of COVID
the
reported positive cases in the country. And now many are trying to link the two, that it is possible to protect yourself by getting the vaccine, and that you will see lower numbers of cases of COVID recorded as a result of this.
Whereas it's been said that it's possible to reduce the number of infections with wider vaccination, I don't think that's the case in Kenya. The numbers in Kenya, in terms of the people who've been vaccinated, are still too low compared to the general population.
True.
I mean, surely
3% of the adult population is still what we're looking at,
it's just
right?
too low. We cannot really say that that's the reason. Maybe we're just riding out the wave, or it's just a reporting issue, because we still are hearing of very many people who are in hospital, who are dying. There are funerals taking place left, right, and center.
And we're also hearing of hospitals that are struggling to keep up with the patient load that they have.
This is true.
Yes.
In addition to that, we're still hearing that there are many people who are hesitant to get vaccinated. And the Ministry of Health then upping their communication to say that the best vaccine is that which is readily available. So people are asked to do their own research. How do you do research on something that you're not even aware of, that you really don't know the details of? Go and do your own research. What are you going to do? Get into a lab and figure it out?
The Ministry of Health that the only way you can, one of the ways in which you can deal with what appears to be apathy is tell people to figure out for themselves. On health matters, people expect to be told.
Absolutely, because we're dealing with a lot more than just what you think. We're dealing with a physiological makeup. We're dealing with scientific research. We're dealing with things that people hold up for months in laboratories trying to figure out. And then you're telling a layman, well, you know what, go do your own research.
No,
and then
tell them.
No.
Let them, if they doubt you, then by all means, let them go and try and get a second or third opinion.
And there's some people who say, well, here we are. This one has 97% efficacy. This one only has 79%. So by virtue of that, I will go with the one that has 97, which unfortunately cannot be the formula on how you then decide.
It doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work like that, right? So now, the thing is, now what experts are telling us is the best vaccine for you to use at the time is the one that is available.
Why don't they just come out and say that all these vaccines are good? Okay? That what one vaccine can do, the other can also do. And that the makeup of these vaccines are almost identical, literally. The difference is at a point 0.0000 something or the other. With the exception of Pfizer, that has been authorized by the FDA in the USA.
For use.
Yes, it's been, meaning FDA said we've seen
no
approval.
longer emergency.
It's no longer emergency. Every other vaccine is on emergency use.
And now that's the thing. You see, when the companies are rushing like this with their marketing, that creates the other impression in the consumers.
It does.
So America has looked at the vaccines. They've actually said, okay, so this one,
Ours.
let's say this one is no longer at emergency. It's not under trials anymore.
It meets the threshold.
It meets the threshold. So if you are listening to that conversation, there's Pfizer here, there's Moderna here, there's the other one that's not even being accepted in Europe there, and blah, 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 blah. Which one will you go for? I want the one that has been told this has met the threshold.
That is what
by a government.
By FDA.
Yes. So, it's tough. I think that our government should just tell us we have vaccines, we are bringing the vaccines. All of them are good. In Kenya, all of them are still under trial.
Which
will be another conversation. But if you bring in the issue of it, all of them are under trial,
They're all under trial. And by the way, this Pfizer that we keep talking about, the main manufacturing plant is actually in Holland. It's not even in the US. So these things of it was made in India, it doesn't quite meet the threshold. Now, this is vaccine politics.
Yes. It's all just politics. It's Pfizer BioNTech. 20 minutes after 6. Let's take this quick break and take a look at the weather, and then we'll look at the headlines shortly. We are live streaming the show, SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Are you online? If you are, say hello. We'll be saying hello to you shortly. A very good morning to you.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Spice FM.
It's getting hot in here.
Oh, everybody steals. It's better a thief who brings something small back. And I say to myself, there's no better thief. A thief is a thief, period.
All those bribes, how much they are getting per year, how much inconvenience they are causing, as much as you call it a small case, it's worth it to be convicted.
The truth is, we are a tribal nation. Because if we were not tribal, and I want to go back to this, you cannot continue walking around with a mug which is clean outside and it's rotten inside.
We have become a fuliza country. We have mortgaged our country because of debt.
You've got one chef working and the assistant chef wakati anatakana koroge unga nini hayuko.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It's cloudy this Nairobi morning at 13 degrees, highs of 24 and lows of 13 through the day today. Nakuru, cloudy at 15, highs of 25 and lows of 14. It's cloudy in Nyeri at 14, highs of 22, lows of 14 today. And in Eldoret, light rain this morning at 14, highs of 24. The low there will be 13. Mombasa this morning is wet at 23, highs of 29. It'll come back down to lows of 23. And Malindi also raining at 25, highs of 29 and lows of 25. Kisumu, light rain at 19, highs of 30, lows of 18. And in Kakamega this morning, it's raining as well at 18. We'll see highs of 28 and lows of 15. Let's look out into Kampala, where it's mostly clear at 19, highs of 29. It'll come back down to lows of 19. And looking out into Dar es Salaam, it's partly cloudy at 22. That'll be the low for today, going to highs of 30. Johannesburg is clear at 16. 13 will be the low, going to highs of 28. Lagos this morning is raining at 25, highs of 30. Kinshasa, light rain at 23. Today it's going to be warm, highs of 34 and lows of 23. Looking out east into Beijing, it's sunny at 23. It'll go to highs of 26 and lows of 20. Paris this morning is raining at 19, highs of 23 and lows of 14. And London is mostly cloudy at 16. It goes to highs of 20 and lows of 14. And still Tuesday night in New York, it's partly cloudy at 23. Coming into Wednesday, highs of 26 and lows of 22.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4.
Okay, many people are online already this morning.
Indeed. Susanti Mulaudzi. I hate it when people butcher my name, so I don't want to do it to somebody else. But that's a beautiful name. And you also have said the best vaccine for you to use is the one that is available. Well, good morning to you, Thusani. Chumba Chelal is tuning from Eldoret this morning and says, up to work and tuned in already. Good morning, loving the show. This is Bernard Masika. Namswa Elisha says, good morning, guys. Tuned in from Mogadishu. And Robin Bogo tuned in from Mombasa this morning. Moses on Monday as well tuned in. And McBrien Nyaribo says, Kutoka Esamba, Niko tuned, hadi mwisho. Stan Nigashistan is tuning from Juja this morning. And says, Eric and the Meru Proverbs should continue. In fact, CT, while you were away, Eric did a thing.
I am quite happy to listen to Proverbs. Do you know how tiresome it is coming up with these Proverbs?
Oh, you come up with them?
Yes.
Allah? You're like a druid.
Not really. Coming up with them here is Google search. Not that you conjured them up in your own mind.
No, but we were fascinated.
Yeah.
You come up with those proverbs by yourself. We should be bowing in your presence.
No.
Allah.
No.
Okay. Ras Bashir says, good morning, tuned in. Macha is where Bade Ashley's tuned in from this morning. Ben Apudo says, good morning, tuned in from Lower Karen, Lower. And that's the new word for Kibera. CT is finally in the city. I thought Ndu was welcoming the fifth. Bado. CT is the first, man. Harold Ayodo, woken up to news of a litre of petrol to retail at 135 shillings. I know, it's crazy. Where can we buy cheap bicycles in Nairobi? I'll tell you a secret. Vincent Omondi, good morning, tuned in from Kisumu. And Kirowo says specifically, CT, welcome back.
Thank you.
Benson Mumo is tuning in from Mombasa this morning. Quite a lot of you online today. Kevin Kipsang, a bit upset about what's going on in Nanyuki right now. He says needs special prayers. As for the fuel prices, I'm speechless. Jesus, please take the wheel, he says. Shamongwai, good morning from Nakuru. Molly says good morning from Namibia. Quite a number of people tune in. I can't get to all of you, but we see you guys and say Karibu Sana to the situation.
Yes. There's somebody who sang he's in Seregea, Lukuyani, Kakamega County.
What? Tell you.
Balozi Eric Major. Seregea, Likuyani, Kakamega County. Karibu Sana. City. Today's proverb.
No. I'm waiting for the Meru proverb.
That was yesterday, Bwana.
Nope. You didn't have only one Meru proverb.
That was the only one.
Nope. I am waiting for the Meru. Can't I also listen to a proverb, surely? Must I?
Must you always just be giving proverbs?
Yes.
Huh? Okay.
No.
Give me time then. I'll look for one more Meru proverb.
All right, then let me go back to the county of Marsabit. All right. This one is an interesting one. This is what it reads in Kiborana. Okay? I want to seek forgiveness as I attempt not to massacre it.
I thought you were already reading the proverb.
No, I'm reading it. But you see, reading it and it sounding like it ought to are two very different things. Okay? Galanat Walt Ya Male Garachi Walt Yao.
Galanat Walt Ya Male
Garachi
Walt Yao.
I am sure I'm reading it the way Mzungu would read it, and it sounds horrible. Nonetheless,
Galanat Yawale ni Garachi Yao.
This is what it means in English. Rivers flow into each other, but stomachs do not.
Galanat Walt Yamale, Garachi Walt Yao.
Yao. Yes.
Every time I hear that language, I think I'm sitting on a plane, and I can just hear the lady.
Okay, you said two things here. I sound like a lady who's on a plane.
No, the language is beautiful to me. This Boran, it sounds like Aramaic. It sounds like what they speak in
Remember,
Ethiopia.
The Borana and the Oromo are the same people.
Same.
Yes, just so that you understand. The Orma also, same.
I got it.
You got it, huh?
Yes.
Bas. So let's look at the headlines then, shall we? Let's start with what everybody's talking about. Pain as fuel prices hit an all-time high. So this had been predicted for a while. For a while, the price of fuel, landed cost of fuel has been going up. But what the government has been doing is it has been cushioning the consumer from a fund that the consumer contributes to. Now, I don't know whether that fund has run dry. I don't know what has happened. But this time the government has said, fund gani, lipa. So the price of super petrol, diesel and kerosene has gone up significantly for the next 1 month. The new prices released yesterday. Petrol will retail at 134 shillings in Nairobi. A 6% increase. Diesel will retail at 115 shillings over the next month. A sharp increase from 107 in yesterday. It's largely a poor man's fuel for lighting and cooking. Kerosene has also gone up substantially, increasing by 12 shillings per litre to 110 shillings per litre. Sasa, things are thick. Previously, pump prices had reached a high of 127 per litre of super petrol in Nairobi in 2018. Now they've gone to 134. We have never bought petrol at this kind of prices. The VAT rate was lowered to 8% 2 weeks later following public outcry. This was the time when there was 16% VAT. It was reduced. EPRA notes that there had been a reduction in the cost of refined petrol and diesel imported to Kenya, with kerosene being the only fuel that registered an increase, albeit marginally. The whole point here is mafuta imepanda.
Now, after that, other things also will do what?
It's
they
the
will
other
panda.
It's the other things that are the issue.
That's the issue. Because now you will start to see, okay, so fuel prices have gone up. What does that mean? That the prices of other consumables will go up. Prices of food items, transport, etc., etc.
The price of everything
will go up.
Goes up. Everything, literally.
Thought it was hard.
Because the public also, everybody else who operates in the market will always look for the fuel prices as an indicator of their pricing. When it goes down, like you keep saying, it doesn't go down.
No.
It doesn't.
In this country, when the price of something goes up, like a commodity, it stays there.
It stays up there.
My friend, fuel price, they can cut. But even these fuel price cuts that they have, man, they're fictitious. Because
Because of what, Sababu?
Because today, you'll be told, because of X, Y, Z, and especially Z, we've reduced the price of fuel.
Blah, blah.
And you've heard me say, blah, blah, give this thing a month and see. And indeed, community budget, it's only going up by 2 shillings.
Yes.
Another one, it's only going up by 2 shillings. You know, if you fail to add, by the time 3 months up, that thing has gone up by 5 shillings. So that reduction, when I call it fictitious, I mean it precisely that it is fictitious. Remember, when oil prices were literally zero rated around the world.
Negative.
What were we told? Well,
exactly that.
Blah, blah.
Okay, stop stammering. Just tell us, what is it? When we bought,
there was this much.
Yes,
was this
and then
much.
Look, the price of the landed cost of super petrol per Mombasa is 60 bob. We are buying it in Nairobi at 134.
74
that is
more.
more than double the price.
100% plus.
So what is happening? It is because suppliers have been given 12 bob on top of this. The pipeline, the road transport, blah, blah. Okay? So that brings it to 72.
Yeah.
You're paying 134. That is some 62 shillings more.
Right.
Why? That entire 58 shillings and 81 cents that's on top there is going to the government.
Yes.
Excise duty is 22 bob. Road maintenance levy is 18 shillings. Petroleum development levy is 5 shillings and 40 cents.
Petroleum development levy?
Yes.
I thought the commodity comes already developed.
Yes. Petroleum development levy is the one that has been cushioning you for the last X number of months.
No, it hasn't been cushioning.
That is where the money has been going. See what you've been contributing, that Harambe has been going to a kitty. That was where you are giving the
we are being spun a yarn under really, really long
railway development levy, 1 shilling and 16
They're
cents.
still developing it,
Import declaration fee, 2 shillings. VAT, 9 bob.
Thing is not good.
Total tax to government, 58 shillings and 81 cents.
Why don't they just throw in another 5 shillings for something like church tax so that people can live
While
pray?
we're at it.
Yeah, I mean,
so that when we go to pray,
so at least we know.
To relieve our woes, at least we know it has been paid for.
Instead of paying 134, let's just pay 140. You know, a nice figure. 140. The other 6 bob, tafuteni ile kitu mnataka kutumia. We will give you the money. You look for where you want to put it. Can say, BBI tax.
Call it whatever you want.
Eric, you know why I'm protesting so much? It's because the government wants us to keep paying for their mistakes. Now we're being told this express highway is going to cost more than we were told before. And yet, if you understand just the basics, talk to any engineer who understands the basics of what should happen when a construction such as this one, of this magnitude takes place, the safety measures, the by roads, everything that should take place, you don't see them on these roads. Yet they were planned for, then the planned they were budgeted for. You go to Wayakiwe, goodness gracious me, woe betide you if you lived, I'm telling you, you're coming into Nairobi, Wayakiwe, on the left, woe betide you. You are going to go up to Seret to come right round on those back routes before you can get to where you live. By the way, that right round, as I'm saying it, is some 2 to 3 kilometers. It's not actually around the corner.
And there's now proper traffic congestion.
Oh, it is massive traffic congestion. People even decide to drive on the same side of the road. Yes, because they figured, say, I need to get where I'm going. I'm not going to go around. I'm just going to drive on this side of the road. Now, you tell me, do you really imagine that when this road was being planned, all that public participation nonsense that we've heard about, that they didn't understand that this was going to happen? Of course they did.
Of course, even now they can see and they can react if they wanted to. Let's just take a break. 24 minutes to 7. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads. So Mungai has given me a Kikuyu proverb, but maybe we can say this tomorrow.
No. Who says we can't say 2 proverbs the same day?
Okay. According to Mungai, well, this is a Kikuyu proverb. Roruka rwa kebu rotithiragwo ne mugogoto.
That's very good. He actually has a point.
Roruka rwa kebu rotithiragwo ne mugogoto. Tafakari hayo.
You don't think he has a point?
24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is SpiceFM.
We give you the latest, the funniest, and the most entertaining updates and news from Kenya and the world while you kick back and relax. Join in on our comical duo Hassan Umar and Sugar Boy on Habari za News every Friday at 10 p.m. only on KTN Home.
Forgiveness is always conditional. Even before God, there's nothing like unconditional forgiveness.
Government doesn't pay you pension until you retire. In fact, they have no money for you. The day you retire, they look for it.
This country is punishing many young people. These young people are more susceptible to be deceived, to be taken advantage of, and they're more susceptible to be bought off.
Let us also talk about where we want our country to go. You know, we are a population of very young people.
We're in a state of capture. The judiciary is under duress. Parliament is in the pocket of the executive. You don't sit and wait for the regime to topple itself. It will never do so.
By the way, let me tell you, these guys are so persuasive. I'm telling you, they can persuade you to sell your grandmother. I'm telling you, they can sell sand in the desert.
See, has anybody on this program said to you as a guest, saying, "Oh, shut up, we don't want to be told what to do"? Has you ever that kind of? Has anybody been
This guy will not listen.
A bit of advice? Because you're working on the premise that we should all pay heed to these proverbs. It's a very suspect notion.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
All right, so let's see what it looks like on the roads this morning. We are still seeing it's quite jammed up on Mombasa Road today. We're looking at that whole area from Sabaki going out towards the SGR. Let's take a look at that and see what it looks like in a short while. But the early morning jam doesn't look too exciting right now. Also looking at traffic coming off Jogo Road, heading out into spilling over to Landis Road and then out towards Kamkunji this morning, coming out of Westlands. Quite tight here. That ramp has never yet been opened. We are told a few months, hopefully. A few months have not finished quite yet, but we'll keep looking at that. The Thika Superhighway this morning also quite jammed, heading out towards the towards the Pangani underpass, soon to meet the traffic that's coming off of Kiambu Road. So around the city also, the bypasses are looking pretty good. Eastern, Southern, Northern. Use the Red Hill Link Road coming out of Westlands so you can avoid the mess that is already Wayaki Way. Shall we look at it in about half an hour and see what it looks like? Are you stuck somewhere? Please let us know. Let's see how we can push you through this Wednesday morning. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. That's how you can get in touch. Text on 40127. Want to do what this morning? We want to keep it moving.
SpiceFM, Malindi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Okay. So, Magoha says the CBC is here to stay. So even with the hiccups that are being faced at the moment, we know that this week KICD is sitting and having meetings about the feedback that they have gotten and are waiting to tell us something about it, right? But he has said the train has left the station and is not turning back, pouring cold water on raging debate over the new education system's extraordinary homework burden on learners and parents. The CS describes it as the most transformative thing, saying shortcomings will be patched up along the way. So don't worry, they're looking at it and it will be sorted out. We also know that KICD is going to tell us something later on in this week as per the feedback that they have gotten, because they've taken a softer approach to this, saying, okay, tell us what problems you're having. The CS, however, has said, look, we're not ruling back on this. He's ruled out the possibility of reverting to the 844 system of education that is being phased out, pouring cold water on the raging debate. He says, we know CBC is not perfect, but the train left the station in 2018. He said this at a media briefing in Nairobi yesterday, adding that shortcomings in the system will be patched up along the way. There has been an uproar over the volume and nature of homework teachers have been giving to learners under the CBC, whose implementation is at grade 5. The president of the Law Society of Kenya has indicated he intends to seek the intervention of the courts to stop the curriculum. Parents have raised concerns about the cost of the CBC, arguing that it has widened the gap between learners and that poor backgrounds, and those from wealthy families. We have no apologies to make for anybody. CBC is here to stay. It's the most transformative thing I've seen, according to Professor Magoha. Teachers have been accused of asking pupils to perform outrageous tasks indeed, and carry to school expensive or hard-to-find items for learning purposes, bringing into question national preparedness for implementing the curriculum. So, with all the noise a lot of us have made over the last couple of weeks and days, one thing is that we should now understand they're not getting rid of this curriculum. They can maybe tweak it along the way. They can take your feedback under advisement, but it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even expect it to go anywhere, really. The conversation of changing the curriculum has been there for a long time. I didn't even expect that we'd even have a conversation of, okay, so there have been complaints. Let's go back to 844. No.
You think this was
the reasoning that led us to CBC took time, and there's a lot of logic into it.
It may not have been communicated effectively or even efficiently, but a lot of thought went into it.
Yes.
I mean, even the 844, you think this is noise? The noise about the 844 was a proper din.
Proper?
Yes. There was an attempt to pilot it, there was an attempt to do this, and then politics came into it and said, implement.
Yep.
And the thing is...
And even then, actually, I remember, even then, parents were complaining.
Yes.
Because this new thing you're saying now, we have to construct workshops in schools.
Yes.
So that's a cost. Because what? Because now we're starting to teach woodwork. And I don't know what. So we have to construct workshops and equip them.
We're teaching boys and girls how to knit,
Yes.
how to cook. So we have to have facilities, which we didn't have before.
Which we didn't have.
Then agriculture took a very central position. Now, many schools, if they're in the urban areas, did not have land. Because at that point in time, farming had to do with land, space.
Yep.
Not this urban farming that we now see. You see, I'm listening to what is written or what is written and what is suggested to relate to what the good professor said. His speech sounds combative.
Yeah.
But I am certain that what he means to communicate is not what is coming out. No. There are people who, if you listen to them speak, you think they're on a warpath, and they're not on a warpath. Haven't you come across people who, when they speak, the volume of their voice is so loud, you wonder, who is this guy quarreling with?
Right. And that's not the intention.
No, it's not the purpose. Because the communication that we keep saying is lacking within government, ministries, and departments is what we're seeing here again. The CBC, the content, its intention, the proposed purpose can be communicated in a far, far better. Perhaps somebody else ought to communicate it. Perhaps they used to use other mechanisms and the CS comes in to summarize it. But him being the key person who communicates it, he communicates badly.
Yeah, true. Because I think because what he's saying, it has merit. But exactly, you could be telling me the worst thing, but the manner in which you tell me then is how whether I'm going to take it or not, right?
When you throw in take it or leave it in a sentence.
Yeah. And then previously when he had said this, that those who are weighing in on the discussion are busybodies who have no idea or any kind of educational background. That was wrong, because parents are stakeholders in this. Children are stakeholders. You cannot take away from parents who've come home after work and are being given essentially another, load of work to do, or who have to go and look for materials that they had not planned for. And it's not as though you're telling people in advance what needs to happen for this curriculum to take place. They're given this information at the end of the day. Some of them don't have an opportunity to see it until their children are going back to school in the morning. So, I think there's several things that need to be taken into consideration, and this is not the approach.
But even the teachers who are professionals have had issues with the system. Now, these are professionals. You can't say they don't know what they are doing because they're the ones implementing it.
Yeah.
So if in the process of implementing, you see, when issues are raised, they are not saying you don't know what you are doing and this is bad. They're saying, look, we find that some of the things in this program don't work as well as you think they should. Perhaps let's have a discussion about it and see how best we can write it so that it actually works well. But any voice that sounds like it's a dissenting voice,
you shut up.
It slams shut quickly.
Basically, yeah.
So the education PS, basic education PS, Dr. Julius Dwan, who's the man who was the head of KICD when they were coming up with the CBC, has said that they'll review this curriculum in 5 years' time according to the UNESCO guidelines. This means that we look at the teething problems or what we have introduced and check how they can be fine-tuned. He was telling members of the Editors Guild during a breakfast meeting between journalists and KICD. The CBC entered its 4th year when schools opened in August. This means that KICD will start the review of the new curriculum next year to capture all the contentious issues so far raised around implementation. His explanation came on that day when Magoha declared that the implementation is unstoppable. That's a fact. Well, nothing is perfect in Kenya, not even CBC, but let's know for sure that CBC train left the station long ago, according to what Magoha said. So, review is going to take place. But even the mechanism for that review is where now the issues come in.
Yeah.
Because I think what they should then do is find a way of engaging all the stakeholders, particularly the parents, the learners, the teachers, and have them separate. Do a survey and understand how are the learners engaging and interacting with CBC. What do they find nice? What is working? What's not working? Have another way of speaking to the parents across the country. You'll speak with parents from urban schools. You'll speak with parents too from peri-urban and then rural schools. Those in public, those in private schools. Gather all of them together and hear what they're saying and understand their context. Listen to the teachers as well. There are teachers who are very well facilitated. They are able to do all these things.
Sure.
They can send instructions with the children and, they'll be able to help you. If I send this child home and I've given them this homework to do with their parent, the parent will be able to do. They can print, they can do this and the other. There are teachers who will tell you, I don't even know how to.
Plus, you said something that was really important last week, Eric, when you were talking about the fact that I think the curriculum has to be malleable such that you find yourself in a particular situation, then you have to apply the curriculum to the context within which you are in.
Yes.
There are some areas where you ask people in Nairobi to do X, Y, Z, and you can't expect that it be done in another area because of the facilities that they have. And looking at this curriculum and just looking at, if I use the example of my children and what they've been able to consume vis-a-vis the previous system, I can see clearly that this system has its merits. Definitely, probably a better holistic approach to learning. But a lot of things have to be taken into consideration.
There's something that came out of this and this, again, is a comment that is attributed to Professor Magoha and said, look, we are not saying there's anything wrong with the previous curriculum. No. What we're saying is that with time, you need to adjust and make appropriate changes to fit the times in which we live.
Sure.
Now, if you look at education systems around the world, they all go through changes. Remember once upon a time when you had examinations in class 4, standard 4. One in standard, it was called common entrance. In standard 7, CP, KCP, KP, whatever it was called then. Then you have another exam in Form 2. Now, at each of these stages, you could actually terminate this formal education that you're going through and divert and go into a polytechnic,
Oh,
go
yeah?
into vocational. Yes, you could go into vocational training. You had a certificate that indicated that you had reached that level. They were all phased out. So for all those years, you then end up with 2 certificates, one in standard 8 or 7 and one after Form 4. Okay? But is there a plan for you to divert? Is there a plan to train you? Are there schools, secondary schools or primary schools that have a leaning towards what you end up with in vocational training, whether it's business, whether it's technical, whether it's commercial? All these courses that people then pursue after Form 4. Should one not think of these courses being available at certain institutions at a stage that is lower down than the secondary level as you move into secondary school, so that there are people who are technically minded and they don't really want too much of this academia. So as you study, you do not study as many units, say, of English or literature or geography as the others, but you do study some of it, so you're informed. But you focus on the line that you plan or hope or think that you're good at. Now, those are the adjustments that are made. Now, what I'm saying sounds like it's futuristic. It isn't. This is what was the case before. You'd hear of a secondary school, it was called Thika Technical Secondary School.
Yes.
It was an ordinary technical secondary school, but with a leaning towards technical subjects. Mombasa Technical School.
Right.
They were all over the country. Long before Polytechnic, long before village polytechnics, you had a taste of something that you'd like to do. Now, what are we saying? If the CBC is tending towards ensuring that people have a very clear idea of the direction that they can take, the CBC is a good plan, but can we have a little more conversation about it?
Around, yes.
So that people can get to own it.
Okay.
Can I tell you about Kenya Power?
Yes.
Yeah, tell us about Kenya Power.
Okay. So, some of the Kenya Power directors currently under investigation undermined the top management of the utility firm and overreacted on procurement matters, according to union officials. Now, the Assistant Secretary General of the Central Organization of Trade Unions has also accused Kenya Power board members under the radar of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission of going against the Public Procurement Act. So there's a media briefing at the union's office, and according to Mr. Ernest Nadome, who is also the Secretary General of the Kenya Electrical Trades Allied Workers Union, got it? Which represents Kenya Power workers, said the directors have rendered Energy Cabinet Secretary Charles Keter powerless. The CS and the Principal Secretary of the Energy Ministry have no voice. The directors have gone as far as dictating how procurement is done. When there is procurement of any material, they demand for specifications of the tenders before the advertisement is even run. Yet, that is supposed to be confidential.
No.
Wait. What is supposed to be confidential?
The information and the specifications of the tenders are not supposed to be made public. However,
why?
It's supposed to be confidential.
Yeah,
according to them.
why? I'm asking because...
So it should only... The director should only see this on the paper. So who comes up with specifications?
They're able to see it,
the
that
procuring...
they're able to share it. They're already telling other people who probably will apply.
So this is what is
going to-
required.
It's like leakage. You get. They're telling them ahead of time, this is what actually is going to show up, so then you can go ahead and apply. Which
and how
they're
is
saying
that?
is this information
How is that
supposed-
by stepping or overstepping the CS's mandate?
I think Eric has gotten where I was going with it.
So-
what does the article say?
This means they're able to share the same with their tenderpreneurs, and it is a breach of the Public Procurement Act. They also demand for minutes from the Tender Evaluation Committee. I know one who only awards tenders to Asian and Chinese contractors.
Okay.
So it's basically they're giving their friends.
That's
these
what they're
tenders.
saying. No.
This is what he said.
Yes,
He's
that's the
quoted.
person who's
yes,
saying.
This is the
That's
person,
the person who's saying it.
Yes.
So the board, first of all, let's just take a step back. The board was meeting regularly last year because they were reviewing what...
Is this not the board that more than regular?
It's more than regular.
Because they were conducting a serious audit into what has been happening at Kenya Power.
Yeah.
They start asking for details. Yes, this is that board. So they start asking for details. So, so this is a procurement. Can we see the documentation? This is a procurement. Who sat in the tender committee? How was it picked? Can we see it? That now is becoming what? Overstepping the CS's mandate.
Yes, and rendering the CS and actually rendering the PS powerless.
By the way, are you aware that Kenya Power is not a parastatal?
Am I aware?
The PS sits on the board.
Yes, he does. But it's not a parastatal. Just so that we understand each other. So since it's not a parastatal, what are these powers that he's supposed to have over this particular entity?
Well, the government is a shareholder in it, so it has this big...
a shareholder.
The government is a shareholder. The PS sits on the board. Yes. But I think just my casual understanding and reading of this is there's a lot of infighting that's happening in Kenya Power. And a lot of it has to go with one side wants to expose the another side and the other side wants to keep itself hidden. This whole conversation of, this board is doing this. This board is not even 2 years old. Remember, some board members left en masse.
Right.
Yes, they did.
And now suddenly...
But Eric, if you know how these boards work, you will find that any underhand deals that you read about, you will find that all these fellows had their fingers, not necessarily hand, in the cookie jar somewhere along the line. A new board comes in, ostensibly to clean up, but they're looking for space to put their fingers in the cookie jar.
True. I think the magnitude and the myriad of issues that this company is currently facing cannot be solely blamed on one.
It can't.
You cannot just blame the board because according to the union...
and this board also.
Yes, according to the union, the board is the alpha and omega of all the problems that Kenya Power is currently
facing. Which board? This one, the one before it, or the one before the other one?
The current board, who essentially has rendered the CS and PS powerless and voiceless.
Did how many times this board of Kenya Power has changed over the last 5 years?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. They cannot be the bane of the existence of the problems Kenya Power is facing. It's not possible. They're having too many problems, too high a magnitude of problems to blame it on just the board.
The only one common thread is procurement.
Yes.
Yep.
The problems. Do you hear them arguing about how it is that they ought to actually make the provision of power more affordable for Kenyans? Have you heard that being a subject of debate that is making people resign in this board?
Or have you heard it being a subject of debate or asking the questions as to why you're the sole supplier in this country and yet you're having these fucking problems? Monopoly. You have a monopoly. And everybody has the lights on. So essentially you're paying a bill somewhere.
Yes.
So are you asking the question of why this continues to be a perennial issue?
And why is it that every time we are told about Kenya Power, it's the loss they're making, and you're thinking, okay, we get the expansion of that one we got it, the cost we got.
However,
nonetheless,
we still have these problems here and there.
Yes.
There's a lot that's happening at Kenya Power, and I just hope that it can be exposed soon. We can sort this problem out soon, and we can have Kenya Power working. And also maybe we should now start having that conversation about allowing other players to play in the power sector.
That has been a conversation that ought to have been realized a long time ago.
Or probably this is where that conversation is heading.
Probably is where this... probably.
Yeah, you know all this...
This probably may be.
Scripts start from far, my friend. By the time they get to where you are going, you and my God, is this where we were heading all along? All along. This is where we were going.
The stars have been aligned.
Hey, and you didn't know. Keep it right here for more conversations coming up in the next hour. I'll be telling you about how City Hall brought in Kenya Revenue Authority to start collecting revenue on its behalf last year, right? Remember? When Sonko signed many things. Yes. One of them was KRA can start collecting. They missed their revenue target by 6.6 billion shillings last year. Yeah. City Hall, that's what happened.
What was the total revenue
I'll
target?
tell you. I'll tell you.
Oh.
I'll tell you. That proverb that I was taught to read by Mungai actually had missed some words, some letters and some apostrophe. Rorukaro wa kebu rotidirago ne mongongoto.
Very good.
I'd said Mungungutu. Mungungutu.
Mungungutu is
a species of chameleons will always have a jagged spine. That's a James Wakevia and Mongai version of the proverb. Right. But today's proverb is around.
So chameleon is what in that lovely little
Kebu.
word? Kebu.
Yes.
I don't see a Kebu anywhere here.
7 o'clock. Good morning.
Spice up your life. The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. You will have to dig deeper into your pocket to be able to fuel your car after the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority increased prices at the pump. In the latest review, a litre of petrol will increase by 7 shillings and 58 cents to retail at 134 shillings and 72 cents. Diesel increased by 7 shillings and 94 cents to retail at 115 shillings and 60 cents. And kerosene has increased by 12 shillings and 97 cents to retail at 110 and 82 cents in Nairobi. The authority said the prices are inclusive of the 8% value-added tax in line with the provisions of the Finance Act 2018, the Tax Laws Amendment Act of 2020, and the revised rate of excise duty adjusted for inflation as per Legal Notice number 194 of 2020. The Kenya Meteorological Department has warned that heavy rains being experienced in various parts of the Lake Basin, Central, Rift Valley and Northwestern Kenya will continue over the next 1 week. According to the weatherman, heavy rainfall of more than 20 millimeters in 24 hours is expected over western and central counties on Friday, September 17, 2021. Residents in all the mentioned areas are advised to be on the lookout for potential floods, avoid driving through or walking in moving water or open fields, and not to shelter under trees and near grilled windows to minimize exposure to lightning strikes. Now, Deputy President William Ruto has criticized politicians, he says, as seeking support on ethnic grounds, saying Kenya belongs to all and not just certain ethnic groups. Speaking during a meeting with businessmen in Nairobi, Ruto said he would not be intimidated by his political enemies who hold rallies every day with tribal leaders.
Hii fujo yote hawa wanaume wananiletea ati wanafikiri ya kwamba nimeharibu biashara yao, ati wanataka tu wao waendelee na wengine wakae huko nyuma. Lakini nimewaambia safari hii, my friends, mujipange, madharau mtawacha, kiburi mtawacha, kwa sababu Kenya hii ni yetu sisi wote. Ni sawa Kanairo? Na mahali ya kujipanga, kwa sababu unajua hii siasa tumefundishwa.
Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka is the latest leader seen trying to woo Kirinyaga Governor Anne Waiguru to his camp as he seeks to have the Mount Kenya support. Kalonzo met with Waiguru before the official start of his presidential campaign in the region, where he warned his competitors of a tough race come the election day.
I'm ready and prepared and willing. Kenyans everywhere. I don't think there's any Kenyan who belongs to anybody. Kenyans belong to Kenya, and we will visit every part. We will, of course, is a game of getting people, convincing people with your manifesto, with your ideas. Yeah, there may be people who started running and they were dancing Ndombolo 10 kilometers before the actual Ndombolo place, but we are catching up.
ANC leaders accompanied Waiguru for questioning by the EACC, adding that was aimed at persuading her to join the party and become the point person in Mount Kenya.
We don't want this governor to be intimidated by anybody. We know it's because of politics. We know in Central it's so difficult to sell a certain political party and a certain individual who is contesting for presidency. As ANC, we're going to stand in solidarity with her, and we are quoting her to be one of our king in Central Kenya. We are quoting her. That's why we are here. You have to quote a girl. Pole, 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 pole.
Now, there was drama in the Senate after Speaker Ken Lusaka barred Muranga's Senator Irungu Kang'ata from attending the Senate session via a video link. Lusaka made the ruling after it was alleged that Kang'ata had registered to participate in the session while in a bar, which prompted Speaker Ken Lusaka to bar him from attending the session on the ground that he was in an unauthorized position when contributing to parliamentary debates. Let's listen in.
Mr. Speaker, you can see me. I'm online and my video is on. We are not seeing you.
The Speaker is drinking, he's in bar.
Okay.
Mr. Speaker is on Thika Highway, he's drinking.
Yeah, we can now see you. But you are in where are you?
Mr. Speaker is in bar, he's drinking.
I'm in my office, Mr. Speaker. No. That's not an office, Senator
He's in
Kamata.
bar, Mr. Speaker.
I'm sorry, we can't allow that.
Now, the owner of the two-story building that collapsed in Kisumu, James Samo, has been released on a 40,000 shillings police bail after surrendering to the police. The 3 people died in the accident, whereas 12 others were admitted in the Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Teaching and Referral Hospital with minor injuries. And 451 people tested positive for COVID-19, placing our positivity rate at 6.6%. Nairobi has reported the highest number of cases at 115, followed by Nakuru at 67 and Uasin Gishu at 28. People between ages of 50 and 60 and above have recorded the highest positive cases at 172. The Ministry of Health further states that 835 patients have recovered, with majority of them being from the home-based isolation and care program. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto.
SpiceFM, Nakuru.
It's building on Mombasa Road this morning, and we see a lot of traffic inbound to the city today. Looking at other parts of the city as well, Langata Road absolutely jam-packed, and this is all the way from the junction, headed out towards the Wilson Airport. The middle of the city is a mishmash of traffic today, and we're also looking at Jogo Road, quite packed as you get towards Kaloleni out onto Landis Road. Kamkunji Roundabout is a bottleneck, not going to let many folks in through to the CBD this morning, and it has built up quite significantly in the last half an hour, all the way on the Thika Superhighway, coming in from the drive-in past the Pangani underpass, and then also joining with the traffic that has now built up quite some on Kiambu Road. So what are we looking at? Quite a lot of traffic. However, the Southern Bypass, looking good, will provide you that quick exit to Ngong Road. Don't use Langata Road because you'll get stuck. Ngong Road, a further entrance into the city. And we're also looking at traffic coming in from Westlands. So it is traffic hour officially, and it's already packed. Let's try and get through it with at least some sanity. Talk to us on SpiceFM KE on Twitter so we can get through that. Text on 40127.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room. The
It's
only
7:37
way to
after 7.
start your
Very
day.
good morning to you. Kenya's biggest conversation gets into the second hour. This is the Situation Room on the 15th day of September 2021. Let's begin with the day's proverb with C.T. Muga.
Yes, this is a Borana proverb. Galanat walt yam male, garachi walt yao. Now the English translation reads as follows. Rivers flow into each other, but stomachs do not.
Galanat walt ya male, garachi walt iyao. That's what you said.
That is exactly what I have read.
I don't know whether that is Ki Borana, but that's what CT has said.
That is why I actually sought a little allowance at the beginning, and I said, I am certainly and most clearly going to assassinate someone's language here. But then here goes.
Okay, let's get into the second hour. Our guest for this morning is in the studio. He is a lawmaker, a lawyer. He is the spokesman for the Mount Kenya region. He wants to be Kenya's 5th president. He is currently the Speaker of the National Assembly. And we said second in line of succession, not third.
Second.
Second.
Yes.
Okay. The Honorable Speaker, Justin Muthui, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you very much.
This is a lovely room, as you can see, with, peace-loving Kenyans. We taxpayers. What else? Why are you looking at me like that?
Is it Kenyans?
Yes.
Eric, you've started to be on a roll. Go on. What else are we? More adjectives, yes?
Voters.
Yes.
That's important.
Now that is very relevant, right? Voters in the room. Mr. Speaker, we call that the hot seat where you seated. And why we call it the hot seat is because we like to welcome our guests and give them that seat and have a good conversation with them. And we warm it up for them, especially when they come this early. Consider that breakfast served. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much, Asante. This is breakfast.
This is it. This is by the end of this conversation, you'll have had full course breakfast, and you'll be raring to go for the rest of the day.
Asante.
Now, Mr. Speaker, you have served as Speaker in the 11th and now the 12th Parliament. This is no mean feat. You got into this Parliament, which is completely different from the Parliament where you served as a member for Siakago. This is a Parliament that has been created and given more powers by the Constitution. A Parliament that is different because the executive does not sit in the Parliament. The President, his cabinet, the Attorney General are not in Parliament. The way the Parliament is conducting its business is different. There's a Parliament that was given the mandate and the expectation by Kenyans to implement that beautiful document called the Constitution. And then you come in as Speaker. You have more members of Parliament this time than there have ever been. This is a bicameral, so you have other colleagues on the other side called the Senate, and you have to know how to relate with those. All those balls in the air, and then Justin Muthui is told, now, take over. You're the head of the National Assembly. How was it for you, and how has it been so far?
Let me say, thank you very much for that question. I think it's very good to try and understand where I've come from. Indeed, as you said, I had served in the previous Parliament under the former Constitution as a backbencher first, and if you like, a front bench member of the opposition as the whip in the 9th Parliament.
Yes.
And I must say, this current dispensation was a great shock to me and to very many of the members who had been there in the past. Reason being, we were used to having ministers. And I think when ministers were in the House, they tended to bring some element of decorum and respect. And I think it's because, politicians, being what they are, especially those from the governing party, and even those from the opposition who wished to be poached, always looked forward to a situation or an occasion when they could be tapped from being backbench into the front bench, or from being in the opposition into the governing side. We remember we witnessed those things during the 7th, 8th, and 9th Parliament.
Yes.
So here we are. We come. We were used to the 222 members. And as you rightly and correctly said, the Attorney General, among key officials of government, was in the House. And today, we find ourselves, there's nothing like that.
You're all alone.
You're all alone on your own. And we are 349. New system. There's certain things you're not supposed to do without consultation with the other house, something which was completely alien. And even when we used to benchmark in those in the other former years, we never did care too much about to understand how two houses operate from one precinct. So there we are. We are thrust into those situations, but we must make what we may out of it. And therefore, we start with members asking questions, because the standing orders which had been crafted assumed the former system, where you would ask questions. A member would ask questions. Question would be directed at the cabinet minister, who would then come to the House, armed with all the information, and of course even for supplementaries. But now the question is asked, and who has to respond? The chairman of a committee. The chairman of the committee doesn't sit in the executive. In fact, he is not given any more information than the one he is reading. Just in case for the member who has the question as supplementaries and others.
Yeah.
So there we are. And we sit around, the chairman of the committee, as the case may be, reads out an answer, or the vice chair. And the member who asked the question rises in their place and, as usual, courtesies. And the Speaker, I want to thank the chairman for the chairperson for the answer he has given. But Mr. Speaker, I wonder whether the chairman lives in this country or he's just landed from outer space. And then all hell breaks loose, because now the person who's being challenged, he just read something that he was given. I say, but how can my colleague start making such statements about me? You see, and you as a chair, you know, remember you also have some reputation you want to protect.
Yes.
So you are being almost ridiculed about something you have no
control
over.
Right.
You see, when the ministers were there, if something like that happened, the minister would very quickly call his peers and the others. And what kind of answer did you give me? This is embarrassing me. But now, the chairperson, he's not in the executive. In fact, he hardly has any meetings with the cabinet secretary from who has actually signed the answer.
Yep.
So we found ourselves in a very, very strange operating space.
So with the strangeness of that space, was it then more difficult to conduct government business?
Indeed. I think, and even from the executive point of view, they started also saying that, look, you are harassing us, you as Parliament. But because, see, now, both the chairpersons and members of committees and other members say, look, the Constitution says Parliament or any of its committees can summon any person to come and give information or answers. So members are saying, no. And the chairs of committees are saying, no, look, we must summon those people to come here. Then the executive are saying, look, we are not members. The Constitution has said that cabinet secretaries who shall not be members of Parliament.
Yes.
So I said, but then how is Parliament supposed to summon any person? A cabinet secretary is a person, isn't it?
Yes.
So we go to the Attorney General, and the Attorney General says, look, you see, we cannot come to the House. And then, of course, some members also pick some story that had been given in some debates in America as to when they were debating whether cabinet secretaries in the U.S. Can come to the floor. And then we found that they had said there in America that the floor of the House is such a hallowed place, it may not be contaminated by the presence of unelected officials, and therefore kept out. So we are in...
you cannot have strangers.
Strangers, as it were, yes. So we are between a rock and a hard place.
However, Mr. Speaker...
But we had to craft something to get some middle ground, and that's why now I came up with a situation whereby the members would be allowed to read out their questions, and then the questions are referred to a particular committee, which committee then would invite the cabinet secretary to come and down respond
to that committee.
Yes. But see, this system, that process is not very convenient because the people don't always get to know that cabinet secretaries are appearing before committees to respond. Unlike in the past when all answers would be read in the plenary and everybody would be there watching and enjoying. So, but somehow we've continued to navigate the situation in that manner.
Mr. Speaker, you're saying that this is still a work in progress.
I believe so. I believe it is work in progress because, when we finished our new office block, in which we have provided about 16 committee rooms, we intend to have them covered live, all those 16 or so committees to be covered live, so that on occasions when ministers or cabinet secretaries, as the case may be, appear to respond, Kenyans are able to see that indeed their members are working. As it is, this system doesn't quite show that members are doing something. You remember those? I don't know whether any of you remember something we used to listen to many years back called Leo Katika Bunge.
Yes.
You know, people, Kenyans used to know that their members
they can hear their MP,
the MP
asking the minister and engaging the minister.
Today, they say, well, no, these ones were elected and they went to sleep.
But, Mr. Speaker, don't you think maybe it's we're just caught up with, we gave ourselves a constitution and a new system of doing things, but we are still stuck in the old way of doing things? Because I get a sense that even by saying that Parliament shall be as independent and as, delinked from the executive as it is, we're also saying that we're giving more powers to the committees of Parliament, so that the committees of Parliament will do a lot more and in-depth interrogation of issues, but also probably in the issue of oversight and representation, we ought, as voters, as all of us citizens, start looking at things differently. An MP does not necessarily represent me when they stand up and say, Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask question number 2 on the order paper. Is the minister aware, A, that there is a road that cuts between Buri and B, that this road has not been constructed? That necessarily does not show representation. But probably if the departmental committee on roads was to look at the work that the government should be doing, they'll be able to raise the issue of that particular road in Buri. Maybe we're still stuck and we ought to have found a way of moving forward.
I quite agree, but it has been said in several forums that Parliament in plenary is a theatre of all things. Whereas Parliament in committee is really that is Parliament at work. But from our experiences from a number of jurisdictions, and especially from the UK, you notice that what started as a program for 15 minutes called Prime Minister's Question Time.
On Wednesday afternoon.
And I myself observed it in person some years back. It was pushed into 30 minutes, and they're thinking of still increasing that. Reason? Because the country likes that theatre, that drama of the Prime Minister being grilled as it were, put to task to explain certain things, and so people feel, now we can see our members are working. So if in such developed democracies as Britain, people still like that, are we not a bit too ambitious in taking the presidential system, which, of course, as you know, the American system wanted to be as far away from that control of the king. Remember?
Yes.
The story I always remind parliamentarians, which happened on 4th of January 1642 in UK, when the king walked into Parliament and took the chair of the Speaker and much to the embarrassment of the Speaker, started asking about some five members who are opposed to his taxation measures. And he asked, show me, where are they? Where are they? Those ones who are opposed to my taxation measures. And the Speaker, James Lenthal, almost on his knees, almost supplicating, saying, among other things, may it please your Majesty, in this place, I have no eyes to see, no ears to hear, no tongue to speak, except as directed by this house, whose servant I am. Great, because the guy he couldn't understand. So this thing about the control by the executive of Parliament is as old as we can.
Historical.
Is historical. But the Americans, in crafting their governance structure, wanted to make sure that they are far away from that system where one individual, called a president, is able to to control, to exert their authority so strongly in the House. But where we are ourselves, we are caught between this. We are not quite moved because the history that informed the American system is not ours.
We don't have that.
We don't have that history ourselves. So we are still, we are still meandering through corners here and there, trying to see what works best for us. And of course, appreciating that we are a developing country, we also have to carry along the public. The electorate needs to be carried along, as we move. Let the public also see what it is that the members, the elects, are doing. Not just being told that there's a report which has come from a committee that was sitting somewhere where nobody saw, the members of the public did not go there. So I think it's, to answer the question, it's still work in progress.
But please, go ahead.
So, Mr. Speaker, as you see it now, what difference would it make in terms of what Kenyans can see when you talk about Parliament at work? If they could see what was going on, how do you think it would affect the perception or change the perception that Kenyans have generally about the work that legislators are doing?
I think there's a sense in which when people are able to know that this response which is being given started at this point, it has progressed up to here. This is what government is saying. My member of parliament is saying no. The public that elected that member of parliament will know whether their member is the one speaking the truth or government is the one that is at fault. And more often than not, actually, to be honest, I think people, remember, when questions are asked, answers are given. Those answers don't come from the minister. You're asking about some village, as you talked about some bridge somewhere which collapsed, and somebody is perhaps saying that last night there was a bandit attack in my area, and the minister is saying, because he gets the answer from there, and obviously, as it says with the civil service, the police in the area don't want to show that maybe they were
caught unawares.
So they will give the minister some answer that is, laced with a lot of untruths. So the minister will be saying this. The member will be saying, no, that is not true. I was there. I know. These are the photos. These days, if we are that system of ministers, answering in a plenary, then the public would, they will be able to know where to lay the blame. In fact, I think perhaps, that old system, it helped people know whether their members are the ones who are sleeping on the job or it is government. And that exchange is actually quite lively. And I think if it is, even in the developed democracies, except, of course, with the exception of America, where the hallowed place of the plenary, the House, are not to be contaminated by the presence of an elected officials, I think it's still exciting. Can I tell you what happens in the French system, which is, it's a somewhere in between. In the French system, when a member will ask a question, a minister will come with a written answer. The minister will read the response. There will be no supplementary question, which is now a bit too timid.
Yes.
Then the minister will be, in most cases, applauded by their side or the divide, and booed by the opposition, and the matter ends there. But what I realized, because when I was trying to craft something in between, I did some little bit of visit to benchmark and see what happens in various jurisdictions. The only difference is that with them, the answer is largely quite correct. They don't do too much with the bread and butter issues about some broken bridge here, what. They deal with the issues of policy, implementation. But here we are still dealing with who has not been vaccinated, who has not visited some antenatal clinic and things like those. Very, very.
Some clinic has not been built, has no medicine for 3 weeks.
So that's the difference I noticed, that largely, the levels of accuracy are much, much higher than
we
it
see.
is.
Meaning their level of accountability
Absolutely. I didn't want to go exactly. That's exactly what I meant.
But then, Mr. Speaker, if we just look at that and look at the history of what was happening then, and I hear exactly what you're saying in terms of the people want to see representation at work. And this is representation when their member is asking the government questions and pushing for answers. But also we just used to see assistant ministers who are their colleagues in Parliament are the ones who largely will come to answer the questions. Or their colleagues who are ministers who are the ones who are answering those questions. So the banter would just be a lot of banter, but not much meat in terms of delivery. If somebody has asked about the same thing we're saying, so somebody has not been vaccinated somewhere and the assistant minister comes and says, yes, Mr. Speaker, I rise to respond. Yes, I'm aware that there is a health center here. There was supposed to be a vaccination drive. However, it has not happened. However, we promised that it was going to happen. It just ends there. I feel it was just taking up too much of valuable parliamentary debate time on this banter and theatre, as opposed to just getting actual deliverables of Parliament.
Actually, because of my experience in both systems, that's why today I have a committee on implementation. I borrowed the idea during actually my first term in Parliament from some workshop that I attended with the late George Anyona. In some countries, because when a minister makes an undertaking on the floor of the House, it is taken seriously. I noticed, and when we made a report with the late Anyona about what we discovered as happening in other jurisdictions. That a minister just can't come and give a casual statement saying that government is going to do this or the other. Within some specified periods, that minister will be facing the appropriate or relevant committee of the House to go and say, yes, you undertook to do this. You said this has been done. We are going with you to the situ, like the situation room now. Yeah, they would go. So that's why even in the current system, when I came back and when I now became Speaker, I found it had not been brought. So I said, no, this I left. Remember there's a time I was not in Bunge for 5 years. So I realized, no, I must implement. It still happens. And it's a very good accountability mechanism. Because what you've just said is correct. Of course, assistant ministers would come and read, just like the chairman. They would come and read a statement because they are no authority to sign. They would read a statement an answer that has been signed for by their ministers. But the difference was, in the event it was a complex issue, you would see on what we call the civil servants benches, some technocrats there. Just in case he is put to task by the member who raised the question. And remember, it's not just that member. Even the Speaker would give other members 2, 3, 4, depending on the nature of the question, some chance to interrogate what the minister has said. But also, during those days, question time would go up to 3:30. Parliament used to sit in the afternoons up to 6:30. So it would go up to 3:30, which was 1 hour, where you will have done all the other preliminary issues about prayers, motions, notices of motion, and all the rest, plus questions. So it was not. I don't think whether it was really. I can't say it was not proper. Time wasted. I can't say it was time wasted. I think there was value.
Okay.
That interrogation, when a minister is being pushed to the wall, and you see what happened, the Speaker retained the residual authority also, even in that system. In fact, not as much as today, because I'm not the one that is sitting or presiding during questions in various committees. But at that time, the Speaker had residual authority, even because you're not also just there as a Speaker. When members are saying that answer is unsatisfactory, as a Speaker, and the member requests that the Speaker I don't think whether the House should accept, because the question, once it is asked, becomes the property of the House. So Speaker would also exercise his authority and tell the minister, in appropriate cases, the answer you have given is certainly not satisfactory to the House, and I'm directing that within the next 2 or 3 days, depending on whether it was an ordinary question or a question by private notice, to bring an answer that is satisfactory. Let me just say here, one minister I singled out during the 9th Parliament was the Honourable Martha Karua, when she was Minister for Water. The Honourable Martha Karua should get those responses from our technocrats. She would read it. She would read the answers herself against the question, and on her own volition, if she is not satisfied, she will call the member asking the question. She said, "This is what I've been given. I have read it. I don't feel convinced. What is your view?" And the member will say, no, this is surely. Martha Karua would call the relevant officers. Give me this, what the member says, this. In the next so many days, I want the appropriate answer. Right. If we have not done this as government, can I know that we haven't? I don't want to go and cheat the House. I used to really, really admire the way she used to deal with the questions.
Admirable.
Yeah, but not everybody, as you say. Some are just, innocent passengers, non-fair paying passengers in the cabinet.
24 minutes to 8 o'clock, Kenya's biggest conversation. We have in the studio with us the Honourable Justin Muthui, Speaker of the National Assembly, who is also a man who says he'd like to be the next president of the Republic of Kenya. We'll go into that conversation. So we hear about your plans and why you'd like to be the president of Kenya and why people should vote for you. We've been talking about, and you've given us a very good feeling of how you have the experiences as Speaker of the 11th and 12th Parliament. I want to ask on just a quick one on the management of the two parliaments. Currently, loud voices, even from members of the same 12th Parliament, are that this Parliament has been taken over by the executive. This Parliament is under the control of the executive, that you are no longer independent. Your independence was usurped by the executive and given sort of freely to the executive. What do you say to that? I'm sure you've heard it very many times.
Well, of course, this is something very, very frequently said by Kenyans. But I think Kenyans should go back to some little bit of history, including things happening very, very recently. Because we have a presidential system, parties go out there to campaign, and parties win elections. When parties win elections, they have some manifesto they have given to the electorate. They have things, they have programs that they want to implement. Some will require that there is parliamentary approval. Isn't it the normal thing that you out there, as the executive, desirous of implementing certain positions that you require parliamentary input or approval, you use your troops? I see, in fact, just recently, have you been seeing Donald Trump doing that in the U.S.? He would always call his troops, the Republicans. I have seen even currently, I see Joe Biden calling the leadership of, particularly where he has a huge majority in the House of Reps. It's the same thing. It happens that way the world over. Sometimes here in Kenya, we beat ourselves too much. And, it reminds me of some saying in the village that those who do not travel always assume that their moms are the best cooks. I think we need to travel a bit, look at what happens in other jurisdictions. It is the political parties that make the decisions. When I came to the House as Speaker, I offered all political parties rooms where they would be meeting every week, as happens as in other developed democracies, to caucus, so that if there's a point, there's an issue that whatever party wishes to push through, they talk to their members. It is in those caucuses that you agree. A member may tell you, on this one, I will vote against my party because I'm uncomfortable with this, because if I do, in the village or in my constituency, I'll get a flack.
Yep.
That is conscience. Of course, the opposite of that is the stomach. When they vote with their stomachs.
Mr. Speaker, am I almost hearing you say essentially that it's okay then for the executive to marshal his people in Parliament for his or her own desires? Is that what you're saying? That you have people who should be... So what happens then to the people for whom we assume that Parliament is supposed to be working for?
Parliament is... it doesn't work in isolation. And I have not seen any Parliament worth mentioning that works in isolation. What there is, as I was trying to explain, even the governing parties, on occasions, they have a mandate to govern, and they have to do that through Parliament. Bills will have to be passed through Parliament. It is their business to call their members, convince them that we are proposing to do this because of these and these reasons, and therefore we are pleading with you, we are asking you, because we are our party members, to support our position when you go to the floor of the House. It is during those caucuses that members will be at liberty to contribute, agree or disagree, and it is no more. It's no more. It's only that, of course, not many parties took the facilities that I offered them to be meeting weekly, which is the way it is supposed to be, to develop party positions. You hear sometimes people talk about party positions. They never here in Kenya. Nobody develops party positions. I know that because because I've been there. Yeah. Let me give you one small example. When in the 8th Parliament, the Honorable Olo Aringo came up with a proposal to introduce a bill to amend the Constitution to start the Parliamentary Service Commission. I was a Kanu Bagbeja. We were invited to State House and in the morning, and the Riot Act was read to us after breakfast. And then, because Parliament even now sits on Wednesday mornings, but Wednesday mornings are reserved for private members' bills, and that was a private member bill. So we went. When we left the place, we told her, we congregated somewhere and said, look, it doesn't matter whether the executive wants this. This is beneficial to Parliament. Parliament must disengage. Those are the days when, Parliament was an appendage of Harambee House.
Yeah. Bunge imevunjwa.
So, yes, you just wake up. And I remember when we were at the Bomas conference, we just adjourned the normal way to start the conference in Bomas on the following Monday. And then the next day, Friday, we read in the Kenya Gazette that Parliament has been dissolved. Yep. Those were very strange days. So for what I'm saying is that, yes, we have made some progress, but there's a lot more that could still be done. It is not, should not be the case that when the executive wants something,
they always get it.
They all must get it. And I know, like that time, we refused. And
but we haven't seen that now in the 12th Parliament particularly. The executive wants this. The executive has been getting what the executive wants.
Yeah, because we only focus mainly on the controversial issues. The executive has been losing quite... I can tell you from where I sit, the executive loses quite a number of businesses from time to time. But some of them are not very, very controversial, and therefore they are not widely covered. But I do know that they have been losing business, especially this particular time, because this particular period has been a bit. It's been a lot of disjointed in operations.
Let me ask this question. I'm dovetailing it on the question that my colleague Ndu asked. What really can be expected from a system such as ours? Because Parliament is peopled by politicians who belong to different parties, and they all have their interests. But the one interest that Eric was alluding to, but didn't seem to center, and I'm going to say it, you mentioned it clearly, the stomach. The stomach doesn't know parties.
I agree.
So when the issue of the stomach is sorted out, you'll find a very compliant Parliament. I mean, the fact that you have an opposition will cease to matter. Forget the handshake, even if there is no handshake. You will find people complying and people going about and agreeing very amicably.
Once the stomach has been sorted out.
Yes, this is something that was seen long before we got this new constitution. It's not something new. Now, there are reasons that are given, but in a political setup, let me say what I want to say. I'm saying this. Sometimes the yardstick that we use to judge Parliament is the yardstick that we use to judge leaders of our religious organizations. A certain morality that they are best placed to maintain. I am of the view that parliamentarians should be judged by a completely different morality, my view.
I think I will not disagree with you. Perhaps it's just perhaps to put it differently, that we as Kenyans get as good as we bargain for. Yeah, because it's where do they come from? Where do politicians come from? Do they come from amongst ourselves? So we also must be a part of the blame. Yeah, because the issue of integrity is a very crucial one, and every time we try to address it, there's always some resistance.
I would say a great deal of resistance.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But I must be mentioned. Let me give you an example. In the last Parliament, 11th, because I have done a lot of studies about functional parliaments. There's something that I came across, and you'll find it in a number of parliaments, particularly in the UK and Canada, because there's an office called Commissioner of Standards. Commissioner of Standards within Parliament is one that from time to time will give you, tell you this is an infraction, members shouldn't do this, members are doing this, so that it's addressed internally. And I thought it was a great idea. And so as we were working on doing the new Parliamentary Privileges Act, now that we had to amend the early one, which did not have bicameral. So I thought, let me introduce this thing of the Commissioner of Standards. Oh, you should have. And it's so unfortunate that the Speaker has no vote, but that committee is chaired by the Speaker. So the Speaker makes proposals on the basis of, studies and research that will be done. And, we feel that this is where we should aim to. In fact, as members of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, we also ascribe to the standards benchmarks of good governance. So, I had done a lot of research. The thing was thrown. In fact, I think the only 2 or 3 members who spoke about it, and the rest put the question. And there I was, regardless of whether I'm the one who came up with the idea, put the question, Mr. Speaker, we don't want any more debate on this. So you put the question, and of course, begrudgingly, and to
accept
and to give the answer that the nays had it. So I agree with you. But maybe we should just ask ourselves as Kenyans what it is that we really expect of our leaders in various positions.
No, I would ask the different question, Mheshimiwa, when I speak. I would ask, what is it that we are willing to do as citizens to hold our leaders accountable?
You should ask us question in a public rally, and
and I will see what happens.
The answer will be different. Now, Mr. Speaker, you want to be president.
Yes.
In this whole system, the system of the Kenyans that you're describing, the system of the politicians that you're describing, the entire environment, how different would your government be from what we've had before? And what would make it different?
Let me start with this. That having been a member of Parliament and now doing 2 terms as Speaker, I have seen a lot about what happens or what ails our government. Indeed, it is in Parliament that the reports year in, year out of the Auditor General is brought. And at some point, I was also chair of the Public Investments Committee. there are two committees that consume those reports. You make reports. Infractions, this has happened. But parliaments the world over just make recommendations. Who implements the recommendations?
The executive.
The executive. I think I will start. That's the first point to start because, this country is, one would have to really be burying their hand in the sand not to appreciate that we are in deep, deep trouble. It cannot be business as usual that over 30% of public revenue at both levels of government goes to waste. You'd have to begin by tightening our belt because it is governance that we must address. Governance. And sit with experts. Sit with experts and agree that we cannot allow this to happen. If we say like we're not saying the proposal to increase revenues going to the counties to 35%, what prevents us from doing it today? What prevents us from giving that is there's so much that goes to waste. Even as we budget, it looks to me obvious that even as we budget, we know 30% of what we are budgeting will go to...
We budget for that waste.
We budget for that 30%. Supposing we are less than this.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what that would mean for this economy?
I can imagine. And that's why every time we have that question here, we tell ourselves, this parliament is a budget-making parliament. So all those things that you're saying start from parliament as well. They participate, the whole budgeting of corruption is also taking place in parliament. When parliament receives a report from the treasury and says we want to spend 2 trillion shillings, weeks later the treasury comes and says we want to spend 3 trillion shillings, and parliament does not put questions to the executive. How can you just willy-nilly just wake up and increase 600 billion shillings in your budget? Don't you see that the problem maybe is instead of being president there where you're dealing with tightened parliament?
Let me say this. As I've just said, anybody who is elected into the office of president has his troops in the house. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So that this linkage, what has been identified by parliament, and in fact I must give credit to this new constitution, because and maybe people may not know that, may not always listen to what I say. I have, since the 11th Parliament, challenged my committees that please, you pass budgets. 3 months down the road, there is a report from the Controller of Budget. Please, and those reports come. They come to me. I distribute them to all the committees, all members. I tell them, please, because very soon somebody will be coming here with making requests for supplementary. Yeah? Can you go through that, and if you see Control Budget is saying, no, look, this has gone to waste. Stop.
Why doesn't it happen?
Well,
are you saying it's the same because control is coming from the executive
yes.
through the membership?
So it is important that out there, as the executive, that's where you must begin. The Riot Act must begin from there, and that Riot Act will not. If Parliament sees that it is there, and from the executive, it is be directed to various agencies, MDAs. Yeah, I'm telling you, this 30% will not go to waste as it does. Of course, when you talk about going to waste, you know what it is. Yes, an euphemism for corruption, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it doesn't go to waste.
It doesn't go to the work it was intended for.
It doesn't go into some dump site, Dandora. No. It goes into people's pockets.
Yeah. Would you be prepared, though, Mr. Speaker, to obviously do this very difficult work of then, number one, rallying your troops and to being in an uncomfortable enough position to root out, if we can just plainly say, the corruption that stops governance from happening properly in this country?
Absolutely. That's why I said I gave that small example of desiring to establish that commission on standards for members. Because let me tell you, we have so many good laws in this country. It is how we implement them. What prevents a meeting of the three arms of government?
Actually, tell us what prevents
for a week, and just like we said, we spend workshop. We are meeting with one agency here, but not everybody is there. Let us know. Why is it that when things are identified here, nothing seems to happen? So that we begin addressing that. Those who say that they have not been given the wherewithal to play their part, we address that. But we don't seem to be doing that. We complain that this has gone to waste, but that's about all. It looks like Parliament itself, and of course this is something that I know some members don't like hearing, but let me say it here. When Parliament is doing what we call national government constituencies development activities, Parliament put itself into a hole. It is not the work of Parliament to implement projects. Development. And Kenyans, it will be good for Kenyans to know that. Don't tell your member of Parliament that you want him to come and build a school, you want him to come and do a hospital. That is not the work of the member. Now that we have devolution in this country, these resources should go to those devolved units. What are we devolving? Decision making and resources. We have public participation. We should strengthen that so that at every level, people are holding their leaders accountable. It is the duty. I really look with admiration the early parliament, soon after independence. The members of parliament were doing what they are supposed to do. Munateta, this is not happening. Why is government not doing this? Even in other jurisdictions, it's when you point out mistakes of government that actually makes those governments be voted out. It should not be that when you point out mistakes of government that the electorate now see you as the enemy and they throw you out. Of course, that is because we have entrenched socially, politically, our people to the politics of the stomach. I think we need to address that. And I think as a country, we really must face it. Let's go before whomever and say that we have all sinned.
And fallen short of the glory.
Fallen short of glory of God. Because let me tell you, I think it's no point people point. We just have to face it.
When Speaker,
I would be very hesitant to continue to do new projects when those which have been started the last 4 years have not been completed. What are you starting them for?
Mr. Speaker, I want to appreciate that you've come and joined us this morning, and we'll have to invite you again so that you can have more lengthy conversations and in-depth conversations, especially as you get your campaign gears up speed. 2 questions, though, specifically on your presidential bid. 1, what's the political party that you're using?
A work in progress. But very, very soon it's going to be unveiled.
I like your answer.
True. There are those who are saying that you're also being courted to be a deputy presidential candidate. Have you been approached by anybody to be their deputy president?
No.
Are you willing to listen to people who come and tell you, we can work together, Mr. Speaker, and you can be my deputy?
At this point, I am a bit more focused on what I would want to do for the country, as opposed to what others think they could do. Because if I start now taking my mind to go to help others, it will get lost. My focus will be derailed. And I'm telling you, my focus is on this issue of governance, integrity among leaders, discipline, accountability, and transparency. I am ready myself from the word go to tell Kenyans, this is who I am. Please, like you go into a theater, split me into pieces and find out what it is I'm made of. That way, we need to get people, that's how people will know that you say, you mean what you say. Because, these things about, we want people who are going to be accountable doing this. We have made it like just a song. It's like we hear people say hallelujah, so you don't know who it is that is saying hallelujah.
You just say amen.
Amen. So, surely, we must go a notch higher. Get all of us off ourselves for scrutiny by the public.
Do you associate yourself with your fellow Mount Kenya politicians who are speaking with one voice and saying this is our irreducible minimum?
Well, I'm not so sure that I understand the so-called irreducible minimums because I haven't been part of that conversation. For me, I would rather we focus on what kind of leadership we need for this country.
Just really quickly, you accepted to hold a position as the spokesman. What does this do then for what we've seen as tribal politics or the splitting of politics in this country? You accepted the position.
Let me say this. Fortunately, we have a very good and robust constitution which recognizes community interests. Yeah. Communities. In fact, even when you're doing boundaries delimitation, if you read Article 89, you'll see that the way constituencies are carved out also takes into account, in a big way, community of interests. So community, we cannot begin demonizing communities. The mistake we make is to make it the area, the centerpiece for political agitation, as opposed to the unity of the country. We are diverse, and that's not a weakness. And I think we shouldn't begin. I don't care when I hear the community this is meeting, because they are discussing things which are relevant to them, and when they are brought at the national level, they come and you get a good mix. That's how you develop and grow a good country. But we cannot just by burying our hands in the sand and assume that we just happened in Nairobi. No. We come from various regions, but that's the beauty. That should be the beauty. That's the thing that that should bring us together. And let me say, when I was growing up in high school, I was very lucky to have gone, to a school where we had students from almost literally all corners of the country. Today, I'm happy when I visit this part and I know that was my schoolmate, that was my, you feel that much more Kenyan as opposed to just, you bring your own things of the village there. You go somewhere here, you be served this food. Oh, how does this one taste? That's what makes Kenya rich. That's that mixture of cultures and various other traditions, I think, makes it that much more, stronger. We should not use it to divide ourselves. So to be a spokesman of a region or a community is not in itself a bad thing, because all that we are being asked to do is, please, whenever we sit at the table, you are the one to articulate the issues that either bedevil this region in this way or the other, without necessarily being advancing tribal hegemony.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaker Justin Muthui, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been an interesting conversation. Hope to have you again soon in the Situation Room. How was the breakfast?
I think I've had enough of it. A good man, will do.
Asante sana. Asante. Have a lovely day.
You too.
Hope to have you again in the studio soon.
Always ready.
Asante. Kenya's biggest conversation is now 4 minutes after 8. A very good morning.
You know, when you see someone being jailed, a governor or two or someone who stole, then people will fear. Because our problem is not the borrowing, it's the stealing.
We've become actually a nation of thieves. The only thing we lack is an opportunity to steal.
The guys who quote the Bible and say, I'm a Christian and all that, and you know they're thieves. Return what you have stolen 4 times. If you know that you have property or anything that you have stolen, just return and say, my God does not allow me to hold stolen things.
We are also a reflection of you, because you elect us. You know, we don't get into our office by ourselves. We are a reflection of the people who elect us.
We don't want to go to the streets. We have a constitution that enables us, assert our will.
When the legislature are now being taken as hostage by the executive for whatever reason, we are now bound by what they want us to do.
This is just outside the realms of reality.
We have impunity written into the DNA of our political class.
How old were you when you learned that Jeshi la Wokovu is Jeshi la Wokovu?
I can't say it very well. No, you need to Jeshi la Wokovu.
And everyone knows. Okay.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is SpiceFM.
Gone are the days when hiring should be about hitting the brick wall, because we understand how much it means to have the ideal candidate working for you and your organization. That's why at Standard Jobs website, we offer the complete employer dashboard that lets you interact fully with applicants, lets you track the full hiring process through a qualified specific smart search tool. What's more, we offer a full-on custom branded page that lets your company stand out with your own to choose custom page. So visit www.standardmedia.co.ke/jobs today and let's help you find the next ideal candidate for you.
102.5 SpiceFM, Kisumu.
You know, when you see someone being jailed, a governor or two or someone who stole, then people will fear. Because our problem is not the borrowing, it's the stealing.
We've become actually a nation of thieves. The only thing we lack is an opportunity to steal.
The guys who quote the Bible and say, I'm a Christian and all that, and you know they're thieves. Return what you have stolen 4 times. If you know that you have property or anything that you have stolen, just return and say, my God does not allow me to hold stolen things.
We are also a reflection of you, because you elect us. You know, we don't get into our office by ourselves. We are a reflection of the people who elect us.
We don't want to go to the streets. We have a constitution that enables us, assert our will.
When the legislature are now being taken as hostage by the executive for whatever reason, we are now bound by what they want us to do.
This is just outside the realms of reality.
We have impunity written into the DNA of our political class.
How old were you when you learned that Jeshi la Wokovu is Jeshi la Wokovu?
I can't say it very well. No, you need to Jeshi la Wokovu.
And everyone knows. Okay.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Chilled Spice.
There are so many people peddling what is false and that it bears remarkable resemblance to what is true.
Politicians have their agenda, and their agenda is to use every opportunity to sell that agenda and to loot this nation.
I have seen major strides that are done in this country when we talk to each other as against talking at each other.
We start getting back into the tribal cocoons which were put to us by the colonial powers. You know, they gave us physical freedom but not mental freedom. We're still mentally colonized today into these cocoons of tribe.
Now, if you live in an area where it's difficult to find a dog,
he's a goat. I kid you not.
In which part of this country is it difficult to find a dog? So that you resort. Afande hii umbo yako iko na
nini umba special.
This is the Situation Room.
What's it looking like at a few minutes after 8 o'clock? Well, Uhuru Highway, all the way from the Nyeri Stadium roundabout through to Westlands and outbound, is absolutely packed. We're looking at traffic on Aerodrome Road, then connecting with the Bunyala roundabout. There's going to have a few problems today. Gong Road, Bagathi Way today, which was your go-to escape from the Langata Road. Today, not looking so good, guys. Coming off from Gong Road, going towards the... what is this place called? The City Mortuary roundabout. Right there, we have some traffic. We're also looking at some traffic. Now let's look into coming out of Westlands, Kileleshwa State House, that whole area, a mishmash of traffic right in the middle of the CBD. Coming out of Westlands proper itself, quite some traffic as well. Jogo Road, jam-packed. Landis Road, another story. Everywhere you look, traffic, traffic, traffic. Hopefully we get out of it without too much of a scratch. But we'll keep an eye on things and hope that it gets better. If you get stuck somewhere, let us know. SpiceFM KE on Twitter, text on 40127. Let's keep things moving this morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
Yes,
the
it's
only
11
way
minutes
to
after
start
8.
your
Very good morning to you. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Getting into the third hour, we've just had a conversation with the Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Muthui. Many things that he said, but before we get there, today's Borana proverb.
You know, one of the things about...
There was a comment, by the way, from somebody who said, you got it spot on.
Let me tell you exactly what he said. He said,
Looking for him?
Yes, I'm looking for him. He said, yes, today's proverb, you got it. You have really made my day by the Borana proverb. You got it very correct. And that is Abdikarim Hassan.
Boss. So, aye, saw my proverb.
Indeed, Galanat. Walt ya Male. Garachi Walt Yao. Rivers flow into each other, but stomachs do not.
Rivers flow into each other, but stomachs do not.
Yes.
Rivers flow into each other, but stomachs do not. I see the rivers flowing into each other, yes.
They can feed off of each other, but the food that I have eaten is mine.
It's yours.
You cannot come and take mine.
It cannot be
Neither can I
tributaries.
feed off of yours. Right?
You know, the thing about Proverbs is the beauty of the diversity. There are instances where a proverb is just a simple statement of fact. There are instances where they are cryptic and you have to sort of like figure out, okay, so that river and the stomach, where did they meet? At the toes, at the forehead. And then there are others where it's a long story and you're wondering, when is this story going to come to an end so that we can begin understanding it? But then that is the beauty of Proverbs, the diversity.
Diversity.
Yes.
Hey, Speaker Justin Muthui. You know, he has said very many things in a very, conversational way, which is what we like to get in this Situation Room. Let's look at some of the, highlights or those facts that stand out. Number one, he has accepted that, yes, there's a lot of control of Parliament from the executive. But he says it's not that it's not expected. It's expected that the executive will try and marshal their troops in Parliament to run their business. He has also said there are some minor bills and moves here and there that the executive keeps losing because they have not even, rallied their troops. But he has said, and given his own example, that it should not always be the case that if the executive wants Road A, you as members of parliament should of necessity then just choose road A. You have a choice. Second, what I've heard of, from the speaker is on the issue of parliament and its oversight role, especially when it comes to budget and utilization of public funds. He says he was speaking of his own frustration whenever the Controller of Budget presents her reports to Parliament. He sends them to the relevant committees. He says, people, just look at this committee, interrogate this. Before the National Treasury comes with a supplementary budget, can you make sure that the money that has been spent so far is actually being spent in the right way? And sort of like he's expressing frustration that you still don't feel as if the members of the various committees and the whole House is actually doing the job they should be doing, much more of oversighting the expenditure of national government.
He's responding to this question we always ask. I mean, how do these guys just go ahead and pass this huge budget? And yet we had a problem with a similarly huge budget and the issues that arose from it. How come we don't hear them bringing out these issues and saying, excuse me, no. In the last budget, you guys did not fulfill A, B, C, D. So why do you suddenly want to tell us that you need more money to do this, and yet some of these things have actually not even been done?
So, remember a conversation we had some time back, and we're asking, I'm going to go back to this, asking ourselves the question, do they understand or they choose not to do? Because we have this very clearly here right now, that they know the problem, there's an implementation issue, but, we're just going to go with it because what are we going to do? We're going to put our hands up. Because if anything, this was very clear just now that, yes, I wish it could be different. And this is the Speaker of the National Assembly who is saying this. I wish things could be different. I wish that I could marshal people to actually get the job done. We've also heard saying that it's obvious that you have troops of the executive within the National Assembly, right? So there's a certain agenda that's being played out at the place that is actually supposed to be legislating for the people. And you are aware that there's a problem, but we're still sitting looking at this problem.
I wanted to swing the speaker a boomerang, which was, well, you are elected by members of parliament. Now, if a majority of members of parliament are from the executive, it means that you are also friendly to the executive, which means that you could also talk to the executive and tell them, look, let's do it differently. Let's do things this way or the other way. But it appears that doesn't happen.
I think, Eric, you ought to have. You know why? It boils down to a very fundamental question about how it is we as Kenyans relate to authority. Starting from the simple mwananchi and the way they kowtow to the would-be mheshimiwa. In this country, the moment you give the slightest indication that you want to be elected, you are a mheshimiwa instantly. And from that point onwards, you are referred to as mheshimiwa or kiongozi continuously. Now, imagine a situation where now you are talking about that relationship with a member of parliament who actually got in on a ticket whose head is the president. How do you think that relationship is going to be? Do you see a parliamentarian telling the president on friendly terms that Mr. President, this is his guy, they're on friendly terms telling him, Ndugu President, this one won't fly.
This one will not fly.
Yes.
But then why not?
Or they're supposed to have been, Parliament said this, you're supposed to have implemented and you have not implemented.
Yes. But then why not? And this is
those
why.
are questions.
Yes, and why not though? Because why shouldn't it be bold enough to say, realizing that your responsibility or your allegiance is not to that executive, but that your allegiance, the job that you are beholden, is
to the oath of office,
to the office and to the people.
The fundamental question.
So why not be bold enough? Why not be bold enough to question and say, hey, this is not what we are agreeing. This is not what we agreed.
I think their boldness is directed elsewhere. It's directed towards perfecting impunity. That's where the boldness. So you don't give a hoot what happens in the rest of the country. You don't give a hoot about the people who actually elected you. But you're asking them to speak truth to power, to speak truth to authority.
Yes.
And I'm trying to ask you the simple question. In this country, I'm not going to this one, I'm not going continental. I'm simply sticking here. it seemed to have been ingrained in our system from the very basics. Look, it starts off as something pleasant. It starts off as something traditionally and societally good. Respect for elders. Now, respect for leaders. Respect for political leaders. Respect for somebody who has a lot of money. So even if you're 25 and you appear to have a lot of money, you're a mzee. Okay? And you're a kiongozi. Now, with that as an entrenched culture, how do you think people are going to speak truth to power or to authority, even if they're members of parliament elected?
You see, the thing is the problem starts with everybody looking at somebody else who has authority. A member of parliament will come to you on the ground and tell you the way unajua mimi ni mheshimiwa. And then they'll turn back and tell you that they actually don't have the authority. There's somebody else who has the authority. Because that's the same thing. Whenever we host members of parliament here and they tell us, you know what, calls will be made from somewhere. You'll be told this is how you need to do. You'll be threatened with this and the other. You'll be removed from membership of a committee or from leadership of a committee. And leadership of committee comes with perks and, there's what you're enjoying. We're all passing the buck. The Speaker of the National Assembly is basically saying, look, I oversight this particular house, but the members of this house also listen to voices from outside this house. And even when you talk about integrity of parliament, he told us about his own, feeling of we need to have a sort of an internal affairs unit of parliament, which he was calling the Commission of Standards. Introduce that in parliament because this is a Commonwealth standard and all. And when he tried to bring it, he was told, in fact, Mr. Speaker, this shall not even go into the floor of the House. This ends here. This conversation that you've brought around here, it dies here. Members of parliament have basically told him, you want us to hold ourselves accountable? No. And that's the end of it. There's frustration. There is as well denial or refusal to accept his responsibility. But there's also what he's saying. From the experience that I've seen, the way to fix this system is having the right person at the top. Having the right person as the head of the executive, because then, as the head of the executive, you have sizable and control of parliament, you have control of the executive, and you have some influence on other arms of government. And that's why he says he wants to be president. He wants to be president so that then he can fix what he has seen where the cracks are. He's basically saying the job of fixing Kenya can only be done by one person, the person occupying the seat of president.
I tend to agree with him. Why I tend to agree with him? We have a presidential system. Okay?
Yep.
Now, the way this one works, we know. The way we also work, we know. Look at instances when something has been lagging, it hasn't been working, it hasn't happened. And then, it's unfortunate, but just the reality of it. The president steps in. Suddenly, this thing which didn't seem to have any chance in hell of actually taking off, not only does it take off, there may be issues around it, but as to it working, remember the issue of Nyeri Stadium and sprucing it up before the burial of President Arap Moi?
Yeah.
The usual back and forth of this contractor was given this and he probably went for a pedicure. Before then, he had gone to have his hair cut. In short, nothing was happening, not much. Then the president drives in there, brings National Youth Service. That's why I use the term, it's unfortunate. 1 day, 2 days, all of a sudden, the thing is spruced up, it's working. The flip side of it, even as I say this, is why must we allow a situation which has very many other players who could actually make this thing work? Why wait until the head of state steps in? What then can you arguably say are the roles of these other people in between?
Everybody else.
Yes, because it is their job really, not the president. So what does it tell you?
You might be asking then, why is it so difficult just to get the job done? Why is it so difficult just to do that which you're asked to do?
I don't think it's difficult.
So why is it then not done? But you'll find that when the person in authority over you then comes, people are scrambling around like rats on a ship. Why does that happen? Why?
This isn't new. When President Arap Moi was president of this country, one of the things that was a permanent feature were terrible roads. Horrible, terrible roads. On paper, you'd be told they're redoing the road. That's when I first heard the term carpeting the road, and some would be recarpeted. Some of that recarpeting, unfortunately, it just required one rainfall. Not a deluge, not a downpour, just a rainfall. And suddenly, there were holes that you could fit your entire body into. Of course, I'm exaggerating, but you wondered what they had done. There are some roads you actually got the impression that somebody had just painted it black. Because it rains, and you're not seeing maram, you're seeing mud. Now, one assumes that that was something terrible. If it happened the president was going to that area and the president was driving, you would miraculously see that road being repaired. Miraculously, within a day, done. So, what am I saying? Why do I have this? The word I think is deja vu, isn't it? Why do I feel that I'm more or less reliving some of the things that I saw in the past? Where it's like the president has to come for something to work. No. It's a reality, but something has gone wrong somewhere. It shouldn't be the case.
Well, it should not be. It should not be. So, having listened to the man and ending the conversation with why he'd like to be president, saying, I have experienced leadership in this country, and I have seen the way to sort out the problems of this country will only happen if you have the right person at the helm of the country, and I am that person. When I say what is past is prologue, from his leadership of the second arm of government, one of the arms of government, for 2 terms, do you feel that this man then understands what the problems of this country are, and then he can also be the solution to those problems?
I think he can. I actually think he can. There's in the chatty manner in which he presented his case, I was listening very carefully, extremely carefully. And I felt he got to the heart of the matter without casting aspersions or pointing fingers of blame, but he got to the heart of the matter. What do I mean? The heart of the matter, from what I gleaned from the statements he made, was the way our system works. People wait for the president to crack the whip before anything gets done. And if the president ensures that what gets done is not the cracking of the whip, but that you have good governance and people actually do what they're supposed to do. You know, before Kibaki came into power, most of the things that were said about President Kibaki were derogatory. The man hardly ever spoke. Even before the accident, Kibaki was not known to make long speeches. Quietish man. I'd like to challenge anyone to tell me that they knew what a Kibaki presidency would be. In his not speaking, that man did things that other people could only dream of doing. In fact, one wished he had been, I'm one of those who wished there had been one more term, so that they could have continued what they had started doing, because it was a good momentum.
But I don't think we can run away from the reality that if until a certain point in time, things have not been running in the manner in which they ought to, just because there are individuals in the system who didn't do it, right? And you say, okay, things are not happening. The implementation we complain about every minute, that things are not happening because there are people who just choose not to get it done, choose not to just have some, or choose the way of corruption instead of, following this. That has become the norm. Until and unless you bring in an element, and this element then could exist in an individual at the top, who decides, I'm not going to take this nonsense, right? Now, once that situation becomes normal, what you inevitably have is that people do what they ought to do, and that becomes the norm. People living under this new situation where we actually get things done. And then you begin to accept and appreciate that this is how things ought to run. So then you start operating no longer under this shadow of fear that somebody's going to crack the whip, but because you have become accustomed to a normal, proper way of doing things. True. And in order for that to happen, you need that initial element of force. You do.
Actually, I would call it direction. I'd call it firm direction. But what you're saying is absolutely true. You know why? As you're speaking, I was thinking about the presidency of Donald Trump. You cannot run away from the fact that that man stamped his authority on that system. I'm not talking about the likes, dislikes, good. His authority. People still talk, whether you like it or not, people still talk about Trump, even now. Angela Merkel. The people have even said this woman is dictatorial. In a system like Germany's, where no single party, deliberately so, can actually take control, she was able to marshal that country and take it in a certain direction. The individual leadership and the position they play in any country cannot be overlooked. It can't be. If you have a leader who seems to be directionless, the country will be directionless.
So let's take a break at this point. 29 minutes after 8, Kenya's biggest conversation on SpiceFM online and on KTN Home. And a question that we'll be asking you and picking your calls after this break. Do you think Speaker Justin Muthui is suitable to be Kenya's next president? Do you think Speaker Justin Muthui can actually make a good president as Kenya's next president? 0719-012-600, SpiceFM KE, Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. Let's take a break, take a look at the weather and traffic. We'll be back shortly. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
You know, when you see someone being jailed, a governor or two or someone who stole, then people will fear. Because our problem is not the borrowing, it's the stealing.
We've become actually a nation of thieves. The only thing we lack is an opportunity to steal.
The guys who quote the Bible and say, I'm a Christian and all that, and you know they're thieves. Return what you have stolen 4 times. If you know that you have property or anything that you have stolen, just return and say, my God does not allow me to hold stolen things.
We are also a reflection of you, because you elect us. You know, we don't get into our office by ourselves. We are a reflection of the people who elect us.
We don't want to go to the streets. We have a constitution that enables us to assert our will.
When the legislators are now being taken as hostage by the executive for whatever reason, we are now bound by what they want us to do.
This is just outside the realms of reality. We have impunity written into the DNA of our political class.
How old were you when you learned that Jeshi Lokop is Jeshi la Wokovu?
I can't say it very well.
And everyone knows. Okay.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
All right, still looking at cloudy conditions in Nairobi this morning. A bit chilly today. Warming up some to 17, mostly cloudy conditions, highs of 24 and lows of 13. Nakuru town is partly sunny, highs of 25 and lows of 14. Cloudy conditions in Nyeri at 15, highs of 22 and lows of 14. All right, taking a look into Eldoret, it's mostly cloudy at 17, highs of 24 and lows of 13. Out in Mombasa today. Light rain still at 25, highs of 29 and lows of 23. Malindi is also wet this morning at 25, highs of 29, coming back down to lows of 25. Kisumu mostly cloudy at 23, we'll see lows of 17 and highs of 30. And Kakamega is mostly cloudy at 24, highs of 29 and lows of 15. Taking a look out into Kampala, it's mostly sunny at 20, highs of 29 and lows of 19. Dar es Salaam is sunny at 25, highs of 30 and lows of 23. And Lagos this morning, light rain at 25, highs of 29 and lows of 25. Joburg, the sun is smiling at 19, highs of 28 and lows of 13. And finally, for now in Kinshasa, it's mostly sunny at 23. It'll go to a high of 34, back down to lows of 23.
Spice up your life.
Okay, something again on Gong Road this morning, moving very, very slowly, all the way actually, through to the roundabout at the city mortuary. Not quite sure what's cooking there, but let's take a look at it. You know what's going on. Talk to me on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Langata Road also continues to be packed. Bagathi Way, your normal go-to road today also. There's some action going there, so that Bagathi Way connecting then with the roundabout, going towards Ngong Road. Not sure what's going on. Surveys where the traffic still is on the Thika Superhighway. Looking much better on Kiambu Road, however. And we're looking at it coming off of Limuru Road, going into Ngara, out then towards Westlands or towards the Moi the Globe Cinema overpass. So in the cities where you see most of the traffic this morning, Jogoro looking a little bit better. At the Makadara train station, however, it continues to be jam-packed. Mombasa Road, yes, still continues to be a thing. That single lane, you're going to have to use it for some time before that opens up. So inbound is where we see the traffic on Mombasa Road. Outbound, not too bad, except you get to that Imara Daima glut. Keep looking at things this morning. Help us out, folks. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text on 40127.
Spice and everything nice. All right.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
26 minutes.
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Spice FM, KTN Home and online. In the room with you is Eric Latif, Ndu Oko, and CT Muga, who joins us from the break. Somebody's asking CT, did CT climb a mountain? Did he go up a mountain? What's up with a white beard? It's like you came back. Where are the tablets?
Actually, the tablets were overtaken by time. Because we now have tablets, but not the form that you can actually just drop and break.
You can still drop and break these ones.
Yes, you can, but you see, the thing is, the information will be stored in the cloud.
Okay.
So you can access it.
From whence you came.
Yeah, so you don't have to, in the cloud from whence you came. Yes. So you don't actually have to climb up again to get them.
So have the 10 been condensed now into just one commandment? Which is it?
You shall love the Lord your God with all your might and all your strength and with all your might and all your strength.
Till all the days of your life.
Kabisa, and your neighbor as yourself.
Bas.
Very good.
Would you vote for Justin Muthui as president? That's the question. Having listened to him, he's told us his thinking and his experience as Speaker of the National Assembly. I mean, giving us what he sees as, these are the challenges being a speaker in this particular kind of parliament. You're a speaker in this parliament where members are standing up there and they're telling you, our people want to see us representing them, and we don't have that platform because the ministers are not here. We can't ask them questions. Committee chairpersons are saying, I'd like to respond to the question by my fellow member of parliament, but I'm not the one who's responsible. There's a cabinet secretary. A cabinet secretary says, the law says I cannot come to parliament. All those things playing here and there. And then there's an executive that is also trying to push its agenda, and it has people who are loyal to it in parliament, and they're pushing an agenda. And there's a whole issue of the questions of integrity, and him saying, I attempted to actually introduce a mechanism for dealing with integrity in the House, and it was shot down by a committee that I chair. And I could do nothing about it because that's the nature of things. It's a democracy. With all those things, and him saying, I believe that the way to fix this country, because a lot of our money is going to waste and a lot of our resources are basically just going to waste, budgeted corruption. To fix this country, you need a strong president and a resolute president. And I'm the man for the job. Do you believe he's the man for the job? 0719 012 or SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Let's hear from you this morning. City, do you believe he's a man for the job? Yes, no?
He is as capable as any other who wants to stand in that. He is of the legal age that is required. He has the experience. Let me explain to you why I'm not being cryptic.
No, you're just running away from the question.
No, I'm actually not running away from because if the presidency was just the issue of the individual and him alone and nothing more, then I would easily give a yes or no answer.
So let's just deal with the preliminaries, okay? Yes, he qualifies. Age-wise, education-wise, everything else-wise, he qualifies.
What you should ask me is, would I vote for him?
But that's a question. Would you vote for J.B. Muthui as president?
Just him, or as opposed to voting for somebody else?
Well, let's say that he's been presented amongst others. CT.
Would you vote for him as opposed to your preferred candidate?
Then if I already have a preferred candidate, then I would certainly not vote for him.
Well, let's assume then that he's not your preferred candidate.
If he wasn't, if I didn't have a preferred candidate, yes, I would vote for him.
Okay. I have a problem.
Go ahead.
Because it seems to me, it's like there is an issue and it has already been identified that this is the problem that we are suffering from today. However, you are in the presence of this problem, many would argue in a position, if not anything, at least to be able to speak out about it on a regular basis. And you do not. We don't hear it from you until you sit here and we ask you the question directly. If it is something that you know this is the problem, my question is, why are we always waiting or hoping that you will then be in a position of power and influence to then start to fix the problem? When you see that this is a problem that is before you, it is an issue of, 300 plus of them dealing with this problem in and out every day. Why not start to make the inroads towards the solution? We always say, these are things we can do now. Why not do them now? Why wait until you are then met with the preserves of that particular office in terms of power to then say we will do something about it? We have a problem that's eating away at us now. You're in a position, if anything, to begin to lobby to solve that problem now. Why wait?
You know, to answer your question, there's something I also heard. I listened and I heard, but he didn't say it. The Speaker of the National Assembly has limited powers. There's a limit to what he can do. Remember when the man says, I can't vote, the best he can do is present a proposal and say, this is what I would like to see done. And apart from just ensuring that the conduct of Parliament and the business that has to do with Parliament is conducted, you're talking about marshalling. He is not the whip. That's the whip's job, the party whip's job. Beyond that, this is a question I ask myself in my head. What else can he do? Now, I know what he can do. He can lobby. Now, the thing about lobbying is not usually very loud. Every once in a while, it comes to the open, to the public space, and we know there was a lobbying to do with this. But lobbying by its nature is never loud. It's quiet. You know, if we... Go ahead, Eric. You've taken a deep breath and you followed it by a sigh, which means there's something profound you want to say.
I share the problem that Ndu has expressed here. The Speaker of the National Assembly is a very influential position.
Yes, he is.
Not just powerful, but influential.
Yes, he
in
is.
very many ways. In ways, in the way we are speaking and saying. For example, he spoke about, why haven't we had, a sitting of the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature, sitting and looking at how we can work together? So the question that he was asking is a question that he should have been answering. Why? He has the influence to actually invite the president and the chief justice to a meeting and say, I'd like to invite you, lady and gentlemen, to come so that we can have a 2-day full-day retreat. We can discuss as the three arms of government there are issues that you have that we need to work on, or we can discuss. He hasn't done it.
Maybe he has tried.
He didn't say that.
We didn't ask him.
That's not what he was saying. He was not saying I've tried and I failed because. He was just saying, he's just wondering why these things don't work.
I didn't respond.
Sort of like he's expecting that the president is on to initiate these things. That if he becomes president, he'd initiate this kind of meetings. If he becomes president, he'd then also make sure that this 30% that gets lost in our revenue, in our spending every year, does not get lost if he becomes president. If he becomes president, he'll make sure that Parliament will do its job well.
Okay.
No.
But
and I'm sitting back, I'm thinking, okay, yes, this not to take away from him, there's a lot that he has done as the first speaker of the parliament, this kind of parliament. There's a lot that he has done. There's a lot that he's achieved in terms of just streamlining operations. But there are very many other questions, those questions of whether parliament has been taken over, whether parliament has done its oversight role properly, whether parliament has been able to actually sink its teeth on the executive when the executive does not implement things that should be implemented. Those ones.
Eric, when you are speaker, it's an elective post within Parliament. It's not as though you're just given the job. Now, the reason you get it is because the party you represent have the muscle to vote you in, which means they have the majority. And in this case, it was Jubilee. So he's a Jubilee speaker. Now, if you're a Jubilee speaker, Part of your unspoken role would be to ensure that the agenda of Jubilee is carried out. So how much power do you really have? This is really what I was actually asking.
So then you could
How
also
much
ask
influence
how much
do you
influence
really
do you have? But if you're going to use that way of argument, CT, then you would also ask the question, all right, if you are in a position with which the influence of that position could guarantee that you could do certain things, at least push in a particular direction, and you chose not to, or you didn't because you had to be in the good books of the executive, of the majority of people who selected you for that position, then one has to ask the question, should you be given more power? How then
You'll
can
expect
you...
the same.
You would expect the same behavior to take place.
You'll expect the same of the legislature. You'll be telling them, I was speaker, my friend.
And I know what it's like. So you also here in this position, you then must dance to the tune.
Yes. Let's hear from the callers. Karaoke in Nakuru, good morning.
Yeah, I'm okay. How are you guys?
We're fine, thanks, Karaoke.
It's a long time.
It's been a while.
Karaoke, are you well?
I'm okay.
That's very good to hear.
I'm very okay, in fact.
Very good.
My take is, if I would like to compare the speaker of the former speaker, what do we call him?
Francis Ole Kaparo?
In the coalition government.
Marende.
Oh, Marende.
Exactly, that's the man I'm talking about. If City
is
saying this guy has no power, and then you compare him and Marende by then. Remember, during the coalition government, we had the former constitution, isn't it?
Yes,
where in this case, I think Marende should be under the executive. Remember, he was so powerful. Remember, the executive by then used to use power the way they want, isn't it? If you compare to today, where parliament should be independent, judiciary, and so forth, isn't it? They are somehow separated in powers. And if you take the position of Marende during those days, and you compare him and whatever has been done by the current speaker, who do you think is doing his job well? If I may ask this question, because I remember that parliament was fiery, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you can remember, there was opposition, there was Raila Odinga and his men who, in my understanding, you know how fiery they are, always, when anytime they're in the opposition side, isn't it? Not like today when they're in the government. But remember those days, it was very fiery to an extent whereby sometimes you see Marende coming out with a kind of wisdom to cool down the fire. Remember those days?
Yep.
My friend? So, if you are telling me today, City, I'm answering you, my friend. If you are telling me today that Marende has no power, then I wonder what was the need of using this word independence of the legislature, parliament. That's what I'm trying to ask you my question. Yeah? Muthui, I think he is more powerful than Marende, but Marende did a better job than this man because, remember, Muthui came there just because he was somehow, members of parliament were influenced by the current president, isn't it? And that is the reason as to why you are telling me today that Muthui should do all he can to see to it that all the bills that are brought to parliament, especially from the government side, should pass, whether they are good or not. Remember the BBI this other day, when it was passed by parliament, by members of parliament, and I give you an instance whereby our current member of parliament here in Nakuru went there just because of some money exchange had. He said that we send him. He has talked to us. Who did he talk to? Remember those days? Remember what he said, if I may recall, during the passage of the BBI by members of parliament. So what am I saying? What I'm saying, Muthui does not even deserve even to be a Speaker of the National Assembly.
Thank you, Karaoke.
Yes.
Asante, Karaoke. Joseph in Nairobi, good morning.
Good morning, too. The lady in the studio, there was a question, there was an argument she had before that Muthui is already in the government, and why is he not doing the things he thinks should be done, yet he has power. And I'll say when you are born as twins and as the firstborn, and you grow up, you have a lot of power in your house, but remember it is your feeling. So the twins I'm calling is the Chief Justice and the Speaker. Yeah, they do. But you can't say how the marriage is gonna go. You're gonna go and build yours, and then you're gonna rectify the mistake you saw in your father's house. So Muthui is gonna do what he has not seen Uhuru done, and so he is the man.
Okay, thank you, Joseph. Mwalimu Irongo in Kisii.
Yes, good morning, Eric.
Good morning.
Ndu and the city, how are you?
Fine, thanks. And how are you, sir?
I'm fine. City, welcome.
Karibu sana. Asante sana for the welcome.
Thank you. Now, Muthui will not fix the problems of Kenya. We saw, and I have liked somebody who has talked about Honorable Marende. Marende would go out of his way to tell Akina Orengo that we could be coming from the same party, you elected me, but this is not right. I mean, he stood above political affiliation, and he had the interests of the country at the heart. But I have two things about Muthui. One, I remember there was that time when the Jubilee parliamentarians were trying to push through some bills which were very uncomfortable with the rest of the country. Some were touching on curtailing media freedom. And I remember there was a time they even wanted to register something to do with, you cannot, it is wrong to say that a presidential election has not been won fairly. Then I did not like the way he behaved. There was a time when, out of desperation, members of court, even from the Senate, including Wetangula, went to Parliament. And I remember he said, when some kind of fight broke out, nakumbuka akisema, take them to the public gallery and deal with them. Muthui has just been presiding over everything that we've gone through, right and wrong. So, because we have not seen him, in fact, if he is saying that at some point he is unable to do certain things, why did he not resign? Finally, kindly, if I can say this, finally, let us also not be lied to that Muthui wants to become president. Muthui is worried. I've been a speaker for twice now. So where am I going? He wants to place himself in a situation where he will be taken by some part of those who are contesting, so that he can be given something to continue lying to Kenyans that he can fix their problems. That's my take this morning. He is going nowhere with the presidency. He is a hypocrite, I'm sorry to say.
Thank you, Rongo. Thank you very much. Anthony, Nairobi, good morning.
Yes, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, let me say further, I'm very disappointed with you guys because you had Muthui there and you failed to hold him to account for his performance as Speaker of the National Assembly. Remember, during Muthui's tenure, that Parliament was sold to the executive. All his rulings were to pander the executive. He had the Constitution on his side, but he failed to stamp his authority in Parliament. So you failed to do that. How do you expect him to stamp his authority on a nation?
Anthony, can I just ask you to pause? And there's a question I want to ask. Give me an example of a situation where he failed to stamp his authority.
Remember the BBI discussions earlier on? Then there's some others I can't recall, but the recent one is on the BBI discussions. And some others, he pandered to the executive. But all his rulings, you can't say, give me one independent ruling or wise ruling that Muthui ever made in Parliament. That he will be remembered for. Remember Marende, the Solomonic ruling? Tell us about Muthui. Any.
One could argue that what he has, the rulings that he has made have been made by him independently. Unless you can show how he has been pandering to the executive.
Well, the jury is out there that he's been one of the most ineffective speakers in the National Assembly.
Okay. Point made. Very good point. Thank you very much, Anthony. Otieno in Kinoo, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I am good. I am actually in town.
Okay.
Now I want to contribute on the ongoing debate about Speaker Muthui. I'm wondering all throughout his tenure what we can vouch for him that he has done for us. Actually, he's the chairman of Parliament that has been presiding over every negative thing that we have spoken about Parliament in this country. Or I can actually walk in the footsteps of the former caller who is asking on what the ruling that Muthui has ever made that has brought a difference in the life of Kenyans, that he can speak of and lay his hand and say that I have done this, I have done this. I have been listening to him speaking all through when people were interviewing him. What can he claim that he has done to us? He has done nothing to us, and that is why he is running along people who are saying that they want to become the president of the country. Now, he has a problem in his hand that he is rightly sitting on when he says that 3% of the budget, each and every financial budgeting year, is squandered through corruption. That is a problem that he can deal with and then come to tell us that I have done this. Now, on the basis of this, I want to become the president. You people can elect me. But he has not done that. He's waiting to become president so that he continue doing that. Okay. That is my contribution. There is nothing that he has done, and there is nothing that he will do to us.
Thank you, Otieno.
Thank you.
Let's go over to Kisumu. Anthony.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome back, City. We missed the proverb.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, on Justin Muturi wanting to be the Kenyan president. First and foremost, there's an advert that Eric says the following takes place between 6 to 10 a.m. There's a voice over there that says we are in state of capture. The executive has captured the judiciary, the judiciary and the legislature. Muturi has been the head of the legislature for the last 10 years, almost 10 years. And he let executive capture. Now he wants to be the executive so that he continue capturing the legislature. The caller before me, I think Anthony from Nairobi, he said there's nothing we can write about him in terms of rulings and all that. And when you want to elect somebody, at least compare him with his past track record or his predecessors. Like we compared Uhuru and Kibaki, we compared Kibaki and Moi. Now we can compare Justin and Marende. And if you ask me, Marende was far much better as a speaker than there was captures by then, but not as much as it is now.
Anthony,
so, Muturi, I think...
Anthony, if we're going to compare, then we also have to compare the times. When Marende was speaker, the situation that we had in this country was absolutely unique. He rose to the occasion and proved himself to be a very worthy speaker.
Actually, it was in a tougher time than Muturi. I think it was the second term was the coalition government.
Precisely. That is exactly what I'm saying. It was a completely different time. And I'm saying he rose to the occasion because he stood out as somebody who was not partisan. Now, we are talking about somebody who's a speaker in a time when people are partisan.
Yes.
And he was elected by that majority who are in parliament and who are ruling the country.
The tyranny of numbers.
They can call it what they like. But the question I want to ask is, when people talk about the influence the speaker can have they interrogated and asked themselves what the role of the speaker actually is?
He's the head of the legislature, sorry.
Yes.
He's the chairman of the very powerful
What's his role? What can he actually do? The Constitution gives him powers, but what can these powers actually achieve within Parliament?
If he's up to the task, he can do it. Excuses are for those who don't want to do it. If you want to do it, you can get away. If you don't want to do it, you can. Muturi just had excuses, like the committees have been wherever. Those people say they'll shoot my bill and all that. He can, and he had to, if he wanted to.
He could influence many things.
If we have to elect a speaker for president, then let Marende come, or they say Kaparo.
Okay.
But for Muturi, if I were to vote like City asked, will you vote for Muturi? No, I wouldn't.
Thank you, Anthony. Have a lovely day in Kisumu. We've been live on KTN Home since about 7:20 a.m. It's now time to say goodbye to the audience on KTN Home. The conversations continue on SpiceFM. In the next hour, we talk about coups and the coups that are taking place in across Africa. So what is it that's happening? All right, keep it right here for us. More conversations. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
So journalist Charles Onyango Obo will be joining us, and we'll be talking about coups in Africa, the coups that we are seeing in the continent. What do those mean? What are we exactly seeing? So there was that coup the other day in Guinea. We have seen many other coups and attempted coups in this day and age across the African continent. Are we saying that we still haven't gotten to a point where we can find a way of electing leaders who stay in office without being overthrown by military and other militia? That's the conversation coming up. Good morning. It's now 9 a.m.
Spice up your life. The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. National Assembly Speaker Justin Muthui has today maintained that he is not willing to be anyone's running mate. In an interview with SpiceFM this morning, Muthui said that his focus is on becoming the country's president because he has issues on governance he wants to fix.
What's the political party that you use?
Work in progress, but very, very soon it's going to be unveiled. At this point, I am a bit more focused on what I would want to do for the country, as opposed to what others think they could do. Because if I start now taking my mind to go to help others, will get lost. My focus will be derailed. And I'm telling you, my focus is on this issue of governance, integrity among leaders, discipline, accountability, and transparency.
On the community politics, he said that Kenya is made of several communities and that it only makes sense if they sit to discuss issues they need addressed.
We cannot begin demonizing communities. The mistake we make is to make it the centerpiece for political agitation, as opposed to the unity of the country. You know, we are diverse, and that's not a weakness. I think we shouldn't begin. I don't care when I hear the community this is meeting, and because they are discussing things which are relevant to them, and when they are brought at the national level, you come and you get a good mix.
This, as Deputy President William Ruto continues to criticize politicians, he says, as seeking support on ethnic grounds, saying Kenya belongs to all and not just certain ethnic groups. Speaking during a meeting with businessmen in Nairobi, Ruto said he would not be intimidated by his political enemies who hold rallies every day with tribal leaders.
Hii fujo yote hawa wanaume wananiletea ati wanafikiria kwamba nimeharibu biashara yao, ati wanataka tu wao waendelee na wengine wakae huko nyuma. Lakini nimewaambia safari hii, my friends, mujipange, madharau mtawacha, kiburi mtawacha, kwa sababu Kenya hii ni yetu sisi wote. Ni sawa Kanairo? Na mahali ya kujipanga, kwa sababu unajua hii siasa tumefundishwa.
The proposal for the post of Prime Minister is among the issues expected to be discussed at the Constitutional Implementation Oversight Committee meeting in Mombasa County. According to the Deputy Chairperson of the committee, Opondo Kaluma, there are a number of proposals aimed at implementing some of the proposals included in the 2020 Constitutional Amendment Bill.
Yes, so the proposal to have the position of Prime Minister created and even the position of Deputy Prime Ministers is a proposal which is still along the corridors. It is not yet before us formally for consideration. So far nothing has been drafted, but because it is a matter that even members of the committee are mentioning, we did indicate that we could hear them on why they are putting forth those proposals tomorrow.
The DCI has arrested 2 people suspected of raping a mentally ill woman in Lamu County. The 2, Shadrach Murimi Maina and Iribai Kokame, pretended to be Good Samaritans. The 2, who were accompanied by Nyumba Kumi elder Samuel Ngumi, were patrolling when they met the woman brewing tea at the scene. The woman was taken to Hindi Magogoni Clinic for treatment. A national men's volleyball team of Falme ended their African Nations Volleyball Championships campaign on a high note, edging Mali in straight set in a classification tie to finish 9th in Kigali, Rwanda. Falme dominated the ranking tie easing to victory without much fuss in sets of 25-21, 25-21 and 25-16 to sign off the biennial championship in style. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto.
.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
On the Thika Superhighway, still quite some traffic this morning. It has dulled down quite some on Kiambu Road. Looking at that whole area, coming off Moranga Road, getting towards Ngara, then out towards the Globe Cinema overpass is an absolute mess. Traffic, all roads are leading into the CBD today. As has been the case for the last few days. We're also seeing traffic continuing on Mombasa Road today. Hey, Langata Road not looking too bad. It's been looking really bad up until now, but currently just at the roundabout at the T-Mall is where we see some. And what was a pulsing situation on Bagathi Way has reduced, at least now you can pass through without too much of an issue. Okay, so it seems that traffic hour might end sooner than on most days. Still continues a little bit on Mombasa Road, however. Let's keep an eye on things. Help us out here as well. SpiceFMKE on Twitter. Text on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room,
It's 6
the
minutes
only
after
way to
9.
start your
This
day.
conversation continues. In the room is Eric, Ndu, and CT, who has the day's proverb from the Borana.
Actually, I do. Rivers flow into each other, but stomachs do not.
Rivers flow into each other, but stomachs do not.
Yes.
In Kiborana?
Galanat walt ya male, grachi walt yao.
Galanat walt ya male, grachi walt yao.
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 Iyahu.
Iyahu.
One word. I-Y-A-U. Iyahu. Not Iyahu.
Iyawo. You know what Iyawo means in another language?
Which language?
Yoruba.
Mm-hmm.
Iyawo means the new wife. Iyawo is our new wife.
New wife added to the one who's already there,
No.
completely brand new and there's
fresh
no
wife.
Bride.
Bride. Okay. Bride. Fresh.
No.
I was seeking clarity.
Yeah, I had understood it the same way.
See both of them. Don't
New
worry.
wife is like, wife number 2, number 3.
No,
Number
this
4.
one is fresh. Bride.
Brand new and single only.
Brand spanking new.
Bride could be bride number 3, 4, 5.
Still new.
As long as
new.
Okay, only one.
As opposed to the old ones.
Only one.
As opposed not married before.
Specifically, by the way, Iyawo.
Yeah.
Beji would be a second wife.
He has brought in an understanding that I hadn't considered. He said, brand new wife to this person, or brand new wife and has never been married ever before.
Okay, don't worry. It's all right.
Wife for the first time.
Meaning, hasn't been wife before. Or wife to this person for the first time.
Can an answer to everything just be yes?
It can be. It can be.
Yes.
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 I mean, yes, that's why we're asking the question.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that one, we're going to be talking to ourselves if we're not careful.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, then. Yes.
In Yoruba.
Mm.
Okay. Of the languages that you have in West Africa, which of the native languages is Yoruba closest to?
Of the languages in West Africa, Kai. That's
Well,
what I do.
I was going to start with Nigeria, but I thought I would just get a little global on you. Yes.
Yeah, Kai. That's how I do. Intonation wise, maybe. Okay. Maybe it's because of border. So now you have people, the Beninois now, the local language spoken on the coast, likened to that of Yoruba. A little bit. Also because there's some Yoruba thrown into it by virtue of the fact that they share a border. So
Beninois, the people from this country called Benin.
Yes.
Pronounced?
Benin. So.
Then why do they write Benin?
It's French now.
Okay.
The last letter of French words are rarely pronounced. If you look at it.
They're silent.
Yes.
Okay. And if there's an I, it's pronounced then E.
Right.
Languages are strange.
I know. Isn't it?
Why don't they just write what they mean?
So, Guinea. Yes? Guinea, we saw unfolding right before our eyes a coup. An old man was suddenly surrounded by his own guards, and he was told, You, Mzee,
sit there.
Kaa pale. We have taken over. Taken over what? See the government. Why?
We're done.
That's not your problem. We have decided that we are taking over. African Union later has come out and said, okay, we are taking action against Guinea and the coup leaders in Guinea, blah, 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 blah. As this was unfolding, people were just looking and thinking, oh my goodness, another one in the Francophone West Africa. Okay. So that one is done. Next. Who's coming up next? What do these coups basically just mean? When we have a continental body such as the African Union, and the African Union then speaks days later, and it issues its ultimatums here and there to the coup leaders, and we've seen those ultimatums again by the African Union. Do they even hold any water? Does the AU have any teeth to do with anything at all with coups and coup leaders, and whether they are young people, whether they are people in the military, whether they are people who are sponsored by external financiers or external forces? What exactly is happening? Do we have proper and true independence in Africa?
And even looking on the other side, have we gotten to the point where leaders who've been in this position for the longest time then would have to start watching their back? Because if a coup has been instituted to get rid of a particular leader, as we've seen happened in Cote d'Ivoire, happened in Mali, now happened in Guinea, then you have to ask yourself the question, are leaders who've been, it seems, in everlasting leadership, like Biya in Cameroon or others in other countries, should they be watching their backs thinking, you know what, if I don't either get my house in order and get things together, could I then be a victim of this,
So you're living in a constant fear of being removed from office unconstitutionally. And you don't get to understand whether the people who are actually removing you from office are motivated by public interest and citizens' interest, or somebody else's interest, or their own interests. I can understand living in a constant fear of an election cycle, but living in a constant fear of a gun, in this day and age, you still have leaders who are living like that. What does that say?
You could ask the other question, is that in this day and age, we still have leaders who are holding on to power for 40-odd years?
Who are being elected into office regularly? Yes.
But this gentleman was in power for just over 10 years. The question that I would like to ask, I understand what the Association of African Presidents would do and how they would actually blow a fuse and rupture a blood vessel when such a thing happens. But do they hold each other accountable? I mean, okay, there's a coup. What has this man been doing? What is it that gave these coup makers the pretext under which they could say, you know something, this is how we are going to come into power? There are those who would argue they don't need a pretext. Actually, they do. Each and every coup that you've seen on this continent if you look at it, there's a president who didn't want to leave. The president and his immediate family and cronies seem to be just getting wealthier by the day.
Uh-huh.
The poverty levels in the country seem to be increasing by the day. And the general dissatisfaction within the country is palpable. There is no country where this has happened where you cannot outline the things I have said. None.
There's no country where this has happened, where there was peace and everybody was happy and there was economic development, things were rolling.
Here is another parallel. In all these countries, there's some serious resource that is not processed in that country. There's some serious resource that's taken to another country, processed and sold.
In this country, it's bauxite, iron ore.
Yes.
Yes.
Which is very, very critical in
world class.
in
Fact,
this particular one.
their reserves are on a global scale. Yes.
So, is there possibility of external forces and external influence?
Certainly.
So, the person who's in office, are they really answerable to the people? And that's why you bring in the issues of poverty and development in the country. Or are they answerable to the people who they feel installed them into that position? So there's a competition about who is installing the other. So if I've installed Ndu and you've installed John, so we are basically competing. We'll remove Ndu, right? And you'll have defeated me. And the language that you're going to use, John, CT, as you bring John into office, is look at Ndu. She stayed clung on to power for so long. She was not even answerable to her people. Blah, blah, blah. It's all stories. You're bringing John to do exactly the same thing.
You know, your point is an extremely valid one. It's really valid. But there's a certain level of blindness that people who take commercial interests at the fore and disregard everything else. I'm calling it short-sightedness because the outcome is not something that you need to be very clever to understand. At some point, it will be obvious that there's a lot that we're not gaining. But then, again, the outside forces and the stories behind it. Look at a country like Libya, where the president actually used the resources of the country to better his people's lives. Did that stop him from eventually being killed?
Nope.
It didn't. And yet his track record when it comes to look after the welfare of his people was sterling.
Was that the global track record? No, it was everything else. Sponsor of terrorists. Let's bring in a journalist to have the conversation with. Charles Onyango is a veteran journalist. He joins us via video link. Good morning, Charles.
Hi, good morning.
It's good to have you on the show. Welcome to the Situation Room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you.
Now, you've heard the conversation that we're having, the introduction of into this conversation about coups and more unfolding coups in the continent. From your perspective, Charles, you've been looking at this for a while. What do you read? What's happening?
Well, you see, if you look at, if you go back 50, 60 years, Africa tends to have these patterns. Every other, between 20 to 30 years, you have, either, let's say political change. It's either democratic on the street, it's either street protests or coups, but you tend to have this pattern fairly regularly underway into that pattern. And I think you are correct that there are certain things which are in common. Because if you look at what happened in Mali, the other thing you should have mentioned about this coup, all of them have fairly lot of massive public support. I mean, the scenes in Guinea were incredible. The people were ecstatic. They were taking selfies with the soldiers. So it speaks to the issues which you've spoken to, that there is usually a lot of incumbency failure. The governments of the day fail. But the majority of these coups, of the 9 successful coups of the last, 11 years, all of them are in West Africa. And West Africa has a series of problems which are peculiar to it, including, an environmental crisis, which is forcing these massive migrations. It has, some people would argue, it is a francophone zone, so it is an area in which some Francophone powers still probably exercise a level of influence and ability for extra constitutional change in government that they don't in the rest of the other, of the continent.
Every time one looks at some of these details, there is a question that Eric asked at the beginning of this particular segment of our show and said, why is it that this seems to be a constant? And are there external influences whose influence, should we say, supersede anything else that we may be discussing here? Or is it just that when people get to that position of power, they lose all senses of proportion, and the only thing that seems to be of great importance is how they can amass wealth?
I think it is that. And Africa has a problem because we have not seen the level of economic growth and prosperity that a lot of people had projected. So what has happened is that government has become a very important source of wealth. So what happens is the national elite, the business elite, usually tend to congregate around the state. Contracts become very important. So I think, the only thing you can say for some of these presidents is that I think most of them become captive, is that there is too much of a large infrastructure which becomes vested in their continued stay in power because there is really very little ability to make serious wealth outside the government in many parts of Africa. So that has been a very, very defining factor for why a lot of these people stay. There is just an incredible amount of organization around making sure that they continue so that people can fill their pockets and make their businesses succeed.
Having said that, Charles, so then a coup takes place, right? So some could argue that part of that is to see this individual come out of power and then install somebody else who would essentially make things better. Could it also then be argued that they could also be instituted to remove this person from power so that yet another individual who would then be able to go benefit from the quote-unquote riches of government then could be installed?
Yeah, that is true, because if you consider coups as a redistribution vehicle, so what coups actually do is basically the equivalent of what an election would do, is that it basically brings a new group of actors, many of whom have been excluded, to basically do the same thing, to enrich themselves. It is their time to pay themselves. So you can almost predict how this will go. The only exception usually tends to happen when people come to power through an armed struggle, because the dynamics of that are often very, very different from a coup. But the coup dynamic, if you look at it as a redistribution vehicle, you can almost predict what the outcome will be.
Many have argued that a lot of these coups are influenced by external forces. From what we've seen happen on the continent, of course, more concentrated on West Africa, are there external players? Should we throw that possibility out of the window completely?
No, not. It's usually there. I've looked at studies which, for example, have studied what happens in the extractive industry, in mining and even in oil, when you have a stable regular government which is challenged every year in free election, 5 years, and if you have either military coup or a liberation movement which is not accountable, the profits in the latter, in this Guinea type situation, is like 8 times more. Because good government, when you have a KRA which will collect the taxes, if you have a port which will document how exports are being done and that is accurate, those cut profits. So it's for business, particularly for the extractive industry, the best form of government is this kind of military rule or anarchy. Yeah.
Many of these coups are taking place in West Africa, like you said, and also Francophone West Africa. What is peculiar about these countries?
You know, the Francophone elite have a very interesting relationship with France and Belgium. And if you see, for example, what Cameroon's Paul Biya does, it is inconceivable. You can see just what happens, for example, in Kenya when the president goes away for 4 days.
Right.
He's mocked and he's laughed at and he's given all sorts of. But this guy, you know, he lives in the Riviera 3/4 of the year, and he's still able to go to power. So, you know, they have this extraordinary connection. You know, they still, you know, to this they actually organize parties and import the wine, you know, the champagne and other things the evening before from Paris. You know, so there is still that very, very deep connection to France and a lot of emotional attachment that the other parts of you know, Africa don't have.
And then let's bring in the role of the African Union, Charles. The African Union is, you know, this, let's call it a club of African countries. Only after a coup has taken place do they come to speak. And CT was alluding to this earlier. Why do we see African leaders holding each other accountable and saying this is what you should be doing as a president, as a leader of a country, in terms of good governance and all? Why do they only come and raise a ruckus after a coup has taken place and a constitution has been suspended in a country?
You know, I think as a political instrument, you know, the AU is a circus. I mean, the AU does some other wonderful things like it has done around, you know, COVID. But politically, it is an important instrument. In fact, if you have ever been to Addis to cover an AU summit, or if you talk to people who do that, you know, there are many times the guys who go to the AU summit never leave their hotel room.
Right.
They don't even go. You know, they're just there, and you know, and doesn't help that the occasional one or two beautiful Ethiopian, you know, girls will drop in their rooms. So they never leave their rooms. So, so you're right that in that sense, they don't hold themselves accountable. But what tends to happen in Africa, though, is that you tend to have more accountability within the regional organizations. And in West Africa, in particular, ECOWAS has been very, very effective. You know, when it puts its foot down, usually other leaders listen. And I mean, and sometimes they can get very muscular, as they did with Gambia when Yahya Jammeh tried to reverse an election.
Yeah.
The president sent in a force and kicked him out. So you tend to have a lot of accountability in the regional organizations. SADC sometimes does a bit of that. The East Africans are a bit shy, you know, to get very aggressive. But the regional organizations tend to hold, you know, the leaders more accountable than the AU.
You know, there's something very strange here. I look at the AU, and yes, it's supposed to be an organization of Africans and their states, but it seems to be more like a presidential club. Now, what, in your opinion, Charles, would we need to see happening for the AU to actually be the powerful tool of change the originators purposed it or hoped it might become?
The unfortunate thing with all international organizations is that they are only effective when there is one big boy who comes and actually calls the shots, supposedly, so that under NATO, for example, it is the U.S., you know, that makes the call, and the bullies, you know, the rest. So we need to have an African power, you know, either Nigeria or an Egypt, which rises, takes control of the thing, pays most of the money, and when it backs, the rest of the people pay attention. I don't think that as a collective, it can ever be effective, but if we can have 2-3 big boys or girls in there who decide between themselves that, you know, this kind of domboya, we should kick him out, and it happens, then it will be effective. It is not the ideal way, but if you want to get results, we will have to go through that phase.
What does it say about us? You had some comments about this not too long ago, Charles. What does it say about us as citizens of the continent, when we see that, coups take place, or they potentially could in other parts where you have long-running individuals sitting at the position of leadership, or those who want them out to be able to get piece of the pie? What does it say about the rest of the people who are involved in the country as citizens?
Unfortunately, this is one of the unsaid things. A very large number of Africans in this country do support these big men who rule for 30, 40 years. They do. They do. And often, it has to do with sometimes the ethnic and regional nature of our politics. That if someone is from the north, you will find that there is sufficient support for him or her from the north, irrespective of how bad he is. So that fact that you're still able to bring religion and community and region into African politics and weaponize it as a constituency of support means that these fellows are actually able to be in power with a minimum level of support for them to function.
Oh, yes. Sorry. There's a lull there. I thought you were still saying something. But, Charles, if I look at East Africa, this is where we come from, you come from, we do. And we look at the power structures that we have embedded in the governments of this region. Do you actually see a situation where our leaders can actually hold each other accountable?
No. No, it can't happen. And then the other thing is that East Africa has some very, very strong-headed fellows in charge. You can't.
Nice choice of words.
You can't. If you called Kampala, or now Nani is away, is out. If you had called Magufuli and kind of tried to lecture him, I don't think he would allow you even to speak for half a minute. He would cut you off. Huh? Yeah. So our people are too strong-headed for that.
What does that speak about democracy then in Africa, in terms of the citizens themselves and the power of the citizens in influencing their government, in changing their government peacefully through electoral processes and having their wish heard and carrying the day in the ballot?
Well, the thing is that despite the many disappointments, actually Kenya is in a good place in that in that regard. And you know what the Kenyan story tells us is that democracy, which is secured through a long civil activism, and Kenya, these things have been going on since 72. And you just have phases of democratic struggles through the 80s, through the 90s, into the 2000s, and now the space has expanded and it goes into the courts and all these things. I think that you have a better chance of assuring some degree of accountability, recycling your leaders through some level of free elections when that is your history. I think that these other histories where there is armed struggle or other rearrangements, or even struggles from the street, I don't think they deliver, the result. So it's with all its imperfections, probably Kenya has won a political lottery in this sense.
Yeah, if you again compare the region, Kenya compare with Uganda and Rwanda and the way they've gotten their democracy in place. But then let's talk about Tanzania, which is different from those other examples that we give. Do you feel that, for example, in the last general election in Tanzania, the will of the people is what is carrying the day? And today, in terms of governance, the government is accountable to the people.
No. CCM is a behemoth. And it's basically, it counts the votes. Let's say it counts the votes.
It casts and counts.
The last election was particularly shambolic in that regard. So you have that phenomenon when you have parties like CCM, and there are just a handful of left. In fact, in Africa, you can probably only think of CCM and the ruling party in Botswana, which have been in power since independence. They have managed to organize basically the country around their image and to entrench themselves in ways which is going to take a lot of doing to get them out of power.
I keep being stuck on, where we should be, aspirational, looking at a real, an ideal situation whereby, economic development and governance and leadership development should be taking place. I'm then worried. And I often ask myself, when are we going to get to that place where we can break this ceiling and say, now we're not dealing with, one individual who wants to stay in power and amass all this wealth for him or herself. We're not dealing with somebody who wants to, pay back for the times that they got stuck in, suffering, etc., etc. But we're actually moving forward as countries and then collectively. What would it take to actually break that? What would it take to get to that point whereby, 60 years down the line, we're not talking about an individual who's sitting in government and doesn't want to get out. Even if we do have that in some countries, like some could argue, like in Russia, that some things like that are happening, but you can still see development happening in the country in one way or another, and other things still going on. What's it going to take here for us to move beyond this thing which has constantly posed as a barrier?
If you're asking for time, you have actually said it. It's probably you're looking at 60 years down the road. I know that is not
Doesn't sound nice at all.
Who would want to see this in their lifetime? But we have what this thing you call developmental states. They are countries and each of them have different political models where some change does happen. If you've been to Ghana, you can see, it's the trajectory of that country. With everything else, it's been going in the, very interesting things happen. The Botswanas are still doing a lot of very interesting things. You go to Rwanda with all the arguments one can have. Some things are happening when you look at Senegal. The island states are doing very well, the Cape Verdes and the Mauritius of this world. So, we have cases here and there and, different political permutations, different democratic structures and political structures which are getting results. It's just that there are too few of them and just the level of change that we are seeing. It will still take many years before we get to the point where they add up to bring the kind of situation and stability and these results that you are speaking about.
There's always this hope that there'll be leadership that actually gets people to this developmental promised land. But then there is what we've seen, as you correctly put it, happening in Kenya, where civil society, the media, the religious organizations gang up together and push an agenda. But the moment you get to the point to say, for instance, where we got a new constitution, suddenly there was a lull. You hear of a few voices here and there, but right now in Kenya, where we are at, the very vices that people thought would be brought to an abrupt end with the new constitution seem to be on the rise. In fact, on a sharp rise. So this whole story of how countries get to the point where democracy is actually practiced, could we argue that this is the process that Africa is taking, that we'll eventually get there, but this is how we are going about it? Or are we just sanitizing greed?
No. We will get there. We will get there. It is slow. And of course, I mean, you're right. Part of the problem is that, peace time is an incredible thing. Because people lose, people cease to be active. People drop off to other things. You have a constitutional amendment, a little, a period of a bit of economic growth and national optimism, and people walk away from political activism and go to make money, to raise their families, to do this kind of thing, and the process kind of falls into a slump. So and for that reason, you kind of tend to have reversals. So Kenya started, celebrating and becoming fairly complacent after 2003. And 2007 and 8 shook it a bit, and then it led to 2010 Constitution. But it has gone, there are, a few lawyers, civil society activists who are. But I remember the time when there was this Silicon Valley rising on the east coast of East Africa, and Kenya was the most sexy thing you could find on this continent. Oh, we're not into watching the politics. We're celebrating. We're having a good time. So really, democratic advance in peacetime is very, very difficult. Ironically.
Charles, thank you very much for speaking to us. Charles Nyangobo is a veteran journalist practicing in Africa. In Kenya, he's a regular columnist with the Daily Nation. Asante sana for speaking to us. Speak to you again soon. It's 20 minutes to 10. Kenya's biggest conversation takes a quick break. Let's see how the roads are looking like now. Coming up to 10 o'clock. Should be off traffic time, no? Maybe not. Let's just see. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Have you seen them? Am I lying?
Yes, it's a very nice outfit, I must say. Good
Thank
job.
you. Asante sana.
The compliment is well received.
Good morning and thank you. Everyone was asking me what channel is SpiceFM.
96.7. Tell them that, right?
Yes, now they know.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you.
What a beautiful studio, my friend.
I've been to other radio stations, but I've never seen anything like this.
Thank you, and it's very nice to be in a modern studio. Absolutely brilliant.
And I have to say, it's a very cool ambiance here in your radio room. Just for our listeners, I think it is below zero in this room here. Very Swiss temperatures.
The sun is attempting to peek through those clouds in Nairobi at 18, highs of 24 today, and we'll see lows of 13. Might get quite chilly later in the afternoon. Partly sunny conditions at 20 in Nakuru, highs of 25 and lows of 14. It's cloudy at 17 in Nyeri, highs of 22 and lows of 14. Eldoret, mostly cloudy at 20. Highs of 24 and lows of 13. Kisumu is mostly sunny at 25. It'll go to a high of 30 today and coming back down to lows of 17. Mostly sunny conditions in Kakamega at 25. Highs of 29 and lows of 15. 25 and still raining in parts of Mombasa. Highs of 29 and lows of 23. We're going to see lows of 25 in Malindi, where it's also raining now at 27, going to highs of 29. Okay, let's look out into Kampala, where it's mostly cloudy at 22. We'll see lows of 19 and highs of 29. And in Dar es Salaam this morning, raining at 27, highs of 30 and lows of 23. Joburg is sunny at 20, highs of 28 and lows of 13. And Kinshasa is also sunny at 23 with highs of 34. It'll come down to lows of 23. Lagos still raining at 24. That'll be the low for today, going to highs of 29. Looking out east quickly in Beijing, it's mostly sunny at 24, highs of 26 and lows of 20. London this morning is cloudy at 15, highs of 20 and lows of 14. And Paris, it's raining at 19. Paris showers, highs of 23 and lows of 14. And New York is waking up to Wednesday at 23. We'll see highs of 31 and lows of 22. Should have been out of traffic hour, but we're not. It would appear that the mishmash of traffic in the city continues. CBD is jam-packed on all roads leading to the CBD this morning. Coming off from Gong Road, where the traffic is looking a little better, but they've all ended up in the city. Coming off Langata Road, where, yes, indeed, it's just a little bit better. Has done what? Entered into the city. We're looking at traffic on Uhuru Highway all the way from the Nyeri Stadium roundabout out to the city and then spilling over into Westlands. And then all the traffic that's coming in from Westlands, they've done what? They've met in the city. Coming off of Thika Superhighway as well. Much better now, but we're just looking at that little stretch between the Muthui Square and the Pangani underpass. Apart from that, it's a breeze on the Thika Superhighway this morning. Mombasa Road inbound, a little bit of a hold up there again between the Weybridge and the SGR. Beyond that, not too much of an issue. Let's keep an eye on things today, shall we? SpiceFM KE on Twitter, text on 40127.
102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Kenya's biggest conversation continues. So that whole conversation about what's happening around Africa and what the impact of these coups is having on democracy and on advancement of the people. Bottom line is the people of Guinea, the poverty that they had 5 years ago.
5?
Is the poverty that they have today.
Since independence.
Yes.
You know what is... When you talk about it, Guinea is a little far from us. You need to go to DRC, a country that is resource rich. You can count the days that country has actually known what we in Kenya would refer to as relative peace. There's always this problem or the other. And that's where the question that you asked about external influences and external interests, well, it's spot on. Because if you look at a country like DRC has provinces. Okay? And many of those provinces are at best semi-autonomous. Yes. Whoever the governor or whoever the boss of that particular county is the boss.
Of everything.
They actually are the boss. You have a president, yes. But why am I, if we were to go to West Africa, Ndu here will correct me if I'm wrong. The country that she originally came from, their governors.
Sorry? Okay.
Yeah, the country that you originally came from. Okay. Their governors have powers. I mean, real powers. Yes, you have a president, but you don't go to a state and start talking about, you talk to the governor. Now, what am I saying? I'm saying that I think of Nigeria because they have different levels of power. You know, in Nigeria, you still have, and Ghana, traditional leaders, traditional kings and chiefs still also holding sway. So it's like you segment power, and by segmenting power, you actually provide some sort of balance. Now, when you have some of these other countries, we decided to actually go look at democracy purely from the Western perspective, especially if they're Francophone. Those countries have problems that we in East Africa, who are Anglophone, cannot even begin to imagine. Because you get the impression that the poor are condemned to remain poor.
But I see that there is a usurping of power and control. There's a usurping of these natural resources. And there's a cooperation, whether they're external forces that are involved in all of this. There is a cooperation of those who are indigenous to the land.
Yes, sir.
With these external forces. Without that cooperation, these things that we are seeing cannot happen. It's just like we talk about the slave trade. There were those who were selling them. There were those who were selling slaves. There were those who became rich. And actually today have wealth untold in the Gold Coast, in Nigeria, in Liberia, in Sierra Leone who are rich today, and that wealth goes
Because
on for
of-
generations because of the slave trade.
They sold
because
their
of
own
their
people.
Yes, they did. Because of their own participation in this. And even today, the poverty we talk about that is in Guinea, the poverty we talk about that is in Gabon, that is in some of these countries who make up the 8 of the Francophone countries who were now dealt this major blow in terms of having to give over their foreign reserves to France, for example. These are people who are living the brunt of the cooperation by people who are indigenous to their countries with external forces. So what is our participation? And that's why I do then agree with Charles. What is our participation in all of this? And when is that light switch moment going to happen? When we realize, hold on a minute, we've participated in the deepening of poverty, in the deepening of bad governance, in the deepening of these issues that we see continue to ask ourselves when will it end? We participate. Until and unless we as
citizens.
The ordinary citizen.
Absolutely. And until we see the role that we play, until we see the role that others like us play and realize
the enabling role that we play.
We can blame things on external forces, which I agree that they also have responsibility in terms of being accountable and how they helped or did not help. But until we see the part that we have to play in this as well.
But I think citizens, in some way, they do see. Like, let's look at that example of Guinea. The military has taken over. The citizens pour out into the streets. They support a change of government. At that point, they're expressing hope.
Sure.
And they are participating in saying, yes, we want to see things done differently. We understand, yes, that by military coming in, it's an overthrow of the Constitution, but it's better to overthrow the Constitution and start from scratch, but we support it. And then we shall have the conversation. We shall have the conversation of seeing how do we bring back civilian rule into the country. How are we then allowed to elect our leaders and participate in electing our leaders? Citizens at that point, I think, are hopeful. It's just that whole movement, like someone was saying, is just a transfer of resources, like what Charles was saying.
It's a transfer to another individual who's just going to come and do the same thing.
But the citizens are not seeing that at that point. What they're seeing is they're seeing the hope. They're seeing the hope that we have somebody who's one of us. This is just an ordinary, normal soldier, not one of the rich people. It's just people from the middle ranks of the military. They are just ordinary citizens. It's only that they have guns and they have training.
You know, when you say this, the thing that comes to my mind immediately is how such opportunities are squandered by these so-called coup leaders.
Yep.
It's a beautiful opportunity for change, genuine change. See, someone like Sankara actually sought to bring change. You could argue, you saw it.
Yep.
But then what happened? And how long did he live?
He was passionate to a core.
Yes.
And to his core, rather.
Yes.
But then many would argue that because of that passion, he was taken out.
Yes. He was actually an idealist. He actually saw what ought to be done and what should be done. You know, if you look at the transition that Ghana made, because of the participation again of the military, specifically Rawlings, specifically the role he played, coup, civilian government, you guys not doing
You're
what you're
joking.
supposed to do.
Coup again.
Yep.
Shoot some people.
Literally.
You know, it was literal and publicly so. All right, let's start this game again. Okay?
And that will be the civilian government.
And let me let you know how serious I am.
Yes. Become civilian government.
Doesn't it lend hand to what we were talking about this conversation then with the speaker? Is that here you are in a position where you can actually do something about it, right? And then you say, look, we can try this thing again, but here we are in the midst of this mud. And we're going to say, so I'm saying you probably then need somebody at some point, because look at the trend. The trend has been anybody do whatever they want. If you want to bleed the country's resources to the point whereby you just left bone, you do what you want, knowing that nobody's going to hold you accountable. The only way that you will then be held accountable and get into practice of doing the right thing is if you have a hand of force or deliberate action. Then you start to see these things as normal. Many would argue that Rawlings took it too far, but did it not yield results?
Has it? It's not yielding results even now.
Till today, is it not yielding results?
Did the man not leave power?
Did he not pass away?
Yes.
A
And we still
responsibility.
see today
Yes.
that things are happening.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great responsibility is bestowed upon somebody, and you ought to take it with both hands and try and do the best you can. Best you can. Not for future, but just thinking, I have the chance now. Let me see the most I can deliver from the opportunity that I've been given. And I want to go back into that thing you're saying, the Speaker of the National Assembly. One of the reasons why he's among he enjoys parks, state parks, proper security, all those things. It's because we have given him a responsibility that you shall steer the National Assembly, the House of Representatives of the People, where people's sovereign will is being exercised by delegated power to their directly elected leaders. You shall make sure that they do the job that they are supposed to do. You shall facilitate them to do the job that they're supposed to do. You shall give them guidance on how they shall do the job they ought to do.
And you shall call them to order.
And you shall call them to order.
And not be afraid.
And when they when they veer off, you shall bring them back and tell them, this is the oath that we all took to serve the people. Not then saying that, no, somebody else has more influence than me. I don't think so.
Do we need to revisit what Rawlings did?
No.
Gave people an opportunity one time. Are we going to come correct, folks? All right, let's try. Didn't work. Are we going to come correct, folks? No. Started to bleed the country dry. Okay. Come for a town hall meeting. Let's have a discussion. That was the end.
As we conclude, let's conclude today's conversation. I promised to tell you a story.
Please.
Hey, I like stories.
23 is the page on the Standard today. City Hall misses revenue target by 6.6 billion shillings despite KRA turnover. City Hall missed that revenue of the 2020-2021 financial year. The Nairobi County Revenue and Expenditure Report also noted dismal performance in own-source revenue collections. According to the report table before the Assembly, City Hall collected 9.9 billion shillings out of a projected revenue of 16.5 billion shillings. Despite the overall collections being 1.4 billion shillings improvement from the previous financial year, the county was shy of its target. You have understood? So here's the thing. This 9.9 billion that they collected is actually more than they had collected the previous financial year by 1.4 billion shillings. All right? KRA came in and comparing to what they had collected previously without KRA and now with KRA, they collected 1.4 billion shillings more.
But,
however, when they were doing their own budget, they had given themselves this long, hefty projection of we are going to collect 16.5 billion shillings in that financial year. No, they fell short of that by 6 billion shillings. This is how the monies were collected. Rates, 2.7 billion shillings. Single business permits, 1.6 billion shillings. Parking fees, 1.5 billion shillings. Billboards and adverts, 736 million. Building permits, 713 million. Housing rents, 500 million shillings. Liquor licenses, 279 million shillings. Fire inspection, 211 million shillings. Wakulima market brings to City Hall 160 million shillings. This is the performance of our county. Goes back into what we were discussing on Monday with the Director General of the Vision 2030. Why would you give yourself a target to raise 16 billion shillings when the previous year you had only raised 8 billion shillings? What magic did you expect to happen?
You know,
you raised 8 billion shillings this year and you say next year we're going to raise 16 billion.
Actually, I don't think it's necessarily magic. If you look at the revenue streams and you know what it is that has been collected, and you've probably done sufficient research and you know where the pitfalls are and you know where the hemorrhage, you would imagine that if we closed these avenues of leakages and we were just more, essentially if you're more efficient in actually ensuring that you collect what you're supposed to collect, not collect and it goes elsewhere, then we ought to get here. I'm saying this because I saw what the Kibaki government did. The steps they took in just, first of all, just blocking hemorrhages and then making sure that people who had previously not been paying taxes paid taxes. Suddenly, we were in a very strange land. It's like we had moved out of this planet.
Yes.
Kenya was raising money to do its own business.
Yes.
So That thinking in my mind, and it was the same KRA through whom this government did this thing. So what I'm saying is, with that background, it doesn't sound strange to me. However, when you're talking about sealing loopholes, if you're engaging the same people, though under KRA, who are doing this same business before, nothing will change.
No loopholes are going to be sealed.
No loopholes will be sealed. In fact, what they'll do, there's usually the first instance where they show you there's some progress being made, but it's just a camouflage. Then you go back to factory settings.
Hey, thank you for tuning into the Situation Room today, City. Today's Borana proverb.
Indeed.
Galanat walt yamale, garachi walt iyao.
Yes. Rivers flow into each other, but stomachs do not.
Bas. Sansana. Join us again tomorrow morning from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. for more riveting conversations. Mature, intelligent conversations take place every weekday morning right here on SpiceFM. Now, you have music. 11, you have more music, but with sugar and spice. And then more and more programming. Have a lovely day, folks. It's now 10 a.m.